We will call tonight's meeting to order and roll call, please.
Thank you. Councilmember Klobstad?
Here.
Vice Mayor Pallavi?
Here.
Mayor Romack?
Here.
Councilmember Zabriskie?
Here.
And Councilmember Henderson?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please now stand and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. It's now time for public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the council on items that are not on tonight's agenda. Any member of the public is welcome to come on up to the podium if they have a comment. You will have 3 minutes, and we will ask you to please state your name at the beginning. So I will open it up. Any public comment this evening? Come on up. And there is a timer, so you know with 3 minutes, it's to my left, your right. And then just make sure the button is green on your microphone.
It's on. I'm not even going to take the 3 minutes. I went on ahead and I submitted a comment online, so I'm assuming you've seen it. So I'm the guy. I wrote it. And really, it's more about, okay, for everybody else that hasn't seen it, it's regarding parking, charging for parking at the ski areas to reduce traffic within Truckee. My push is I would like to see the bus systems incentivized. So putting a check room, forgive me, I'm not a public speaker, but putting a check room in front of the ski area where the buses drop you off, I think would go a long ways, because people show up with goggles. If it's going to be sunny later in the afternoon, like I have an extra sweater on, I want to shed it. You don't have any place to put it. You get on the bus, you have to have your boots on. It's just one of those things that it is awkward. So basically, I would like to see a bus service offer additional incentives, hot chocolate, coffee for anybody that rides the bus. You get on the bus, you have your lift pass. The bus can sense that. I mean, we have the readers, so you actually have the ability to do that. And that would be your clocking mechanism or your check ticket so that you can go on ahead and you can check your stuff. And I like, how do I put it? People, for the most part, they hold on to their cherished beliefs, and they don't like messing with any of their creature comforts. So if you add the creature comforts, like hot chocolate, coffee, a check room right there, and on the building, you can put it right in front of the parking lot, take up a couple of the spaces that you're going to free up in the future, and essentially, you can offer those and you can change people's behavior. Right now, most people don't even know where the bus is. The people that were here last Tuesday morning even pointed out, nobody rides the bus. So I would like to change those behaviors. And I think I probably did a better job in writing than I'm doing right now. So anyway, any questions or anything? And I'll just leave it at that. My 3 minutes, I yield.
Thank you very much. Dave, would you mind saying your name for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name's Dave Rhea.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. And with public comment, we don't do questions since it's not an item on the agenda, but we appreciate you submitting your comments in advance as well. Any other public comments this evening? Seeing none, we'll close public comment, and then we will head to our presentations. Oh, 3 minutes is up. Thank you, Sarah. And I did want to announce presentation 5.1, the Truckee High School Environmental Science Litter Audit. Unfortunately, they're not able to attend this evening, so we will postpone that to a future date. So up next is the local road safety plan update presentation, and I believe we have a whole crew of talented staff members to present to us.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to start us off. Thanks for this opportunity to give you an update on what we're doing to improve what we've been doing and what we plan to do in the near future to improve safety on our town roads and trails. just want to give you a little background on the local road safety plan. The purpose of that plan is to identify and analyze crash patterns and trends throughout the town. And, oh, sorry. Sorry about that. I didn't realize there we go. There's the slides. Sorry about that. Also to develop safety improvement recommendations. And then also consider roadway safety beyond just, engineering and infrastructure, talking about enforcement, education, equity, engagement, and evaluation. And also one of the goals of this local road safety plan that we adopted back in 2002 is to establish goals, objectives, and priorities. And that's some of the stuff that we're going to talk to you a little bit tonight. And also increase partnerships and collaboration. A little more background, our local road safety plan was adopted in 2022 and included public input and a stakeholder outreach. We amended it in August of 2022 so that it would become a Vision Zero plan. And what that really means is instead of just reducing roadway fatalities and serious injuries by 2050, we changed the language. So our goal is to eliminate all roadway fatalities and serious injuries by 2050. These are some graphics that are in the adopted plan, and I'm not going to go through them in a lot of detail, but I do want to draw your attention to the one on the right. You'll notice the circle on the far right. You'll see 93% of all crashes are automobile crashes, with a smaller percentage being bikes and pedestrian related. But when you look to the left, a disproportionate share of serious and fatality injuries occur when people are walking or on bikes. And that's why this plan really kind of focuses on those modes of travel. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go through some of the things we're doing to implement this plan. There are a number of different emphasis areas in the plan, focusing on high crash frequency areas, speed management, safety for people who walk and bike, like I just mentioned, driving under the influence, and then just overall coordination evaluation. And there's 4 main goals of the plan. To maintain accurate collision database so we can routinely evaluate roadway safety. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Educating motorists, bicyclists, and pedestrians on how to travel safely and limit the potential for collisions. Implement projects that make streets safer for every person, and then integrate equity into the safety decision-making process. I'm not going to go through these slides in detail, but just wanted to point out there's a number of policies and action items in our general plan that relate to this and safety on our roads and trails. And so this implementation of this plan is part of our general plan in action. So there they are. There's a huge list. And now, I probably should have started with this, but so you're going to hear from me a little bit tonight, but you're also going to hear from Riley Morrison, who's the street maintenance manager. He's going to talk about some of our road items. We also have Lieutenant Lisa Madden here. She heads up the traffic unit for the police department. Brett Albert was not able to make it tonight. He had a family emergency, so I'm going to fill in for him, but I just want to leave his name up on this slide because he's the one that is in charge of all the trails and streetscape maintenance. So with that, I'm going to pass the mic over to Riley to talk a little bit about what he has been doing and what he plans to be doing in the future.
All right, thank you. I think with a good road safety plan, there's a lot of infrastructure out there that requires some substantial maintenance. So I'm gonna kind of run through some new things that we did this year through our regular maintenance procedures. We implemented some new things, and then things that we do on an ongoing basis, and some of our priorities as far as maintaining our roads and infrastructure. So one new thing that came out of this was some enhanced bike lane markings. So we installed new buffered bike lane on 193,560 linear feet of double white buffered bike lane was installed this summer. That's 37 miles of striping of buffered bike lane. So that's a double white line. You guys are actually not seeing double. That's really there. So it's a double line to enhance the look of the bike lane. A little bit of increased cost due to more paint and reflective material that goes into the paint. And then we did purchase a new long line striper that came to us at the beginning of the season, and with kind of the wet spring and training new equipment operators on a new piece of equipment, and additionally the equipment didn't come with the ability to do a buffered bike lane, so there was substantial effort between the operators in the shop to retrofit that to accommodate the second spray mechanism to accomplish the buffer bike lane. So that all happened. On Northwoods, we did a pilot project the summer before with a larger buffered bike lane with the hatch marks you see up and down Northwoods. So those are some of the new things we did. In addition, some additional striping on the Legacy Trail from the Glenshire subdivision into town. We installed about 5 miles of centerline striping on the Truckee River Legacy Trail. And to accomplish that, we had another new piece of equipment that came. It's kind of a smaller ride-on striper that can get into the tight spaces. We're seeing more roundabouts and more custom striping that we need to do. So this piece of equipment was able to enhance our ability to do trail striping as well as roundabouts and the addition of much more parking lot striping and things that we're getting into. 49 crosswalks are repainted every season for pedestrian safety. We've dabbled in the use of thermoplastic material, but we found on large surface areas it doesn't last. It probably lasts less long as paint due to the amount of chain and snow removal and abuse it takes with large surface areas. So we repaint those every season. And you probably noticed throughout the winter potholes in the roadway. So we also prioritize that. In the wintertime, we do temporary patching. And then the summertime, we come back and install a more permanent patch with a hot asphalt mix that we get locally here. We also have an annual brushing and chipping program on 1/5 of the roadways, and that's per our 5-year maintenance rotation. So we'll run through those shoulders and right-of-ways and address any roadway vegetation maintenance that's needed. We also take a good look at all the main roads and evacuation routes to make sure those are hit at a priority. We have over 4,600 signs that we maintain in our inventory, and that number is continuously growing. This last winter, due to the amount of snow load and damage, we've ordered 160 new signs that we're continually working on replacing. So you'll see some signs that are still not looking so good, but they're here, and the crews are out repairing and replacing signs due to last winter's damage. And then we also have 17,949 linear feet of guardrail that we maintain as needed due to various damage that occurs. They're there to keep people, if they run off the road from going off a steep embankment or whatever, so they do get hit. They do serve its purpose, and that requires maintenance. So crews are out there repairing guardrail as needed. Some more of our priorities: snow removal in the wintertime to mitigate the effects of winter storms. So we try to remove snow on all 170 miles of roadway in town, and then conduct ice control as needed on main roads. So our priority on snow removal is main arterials, bus routes, and then we get into the residential neighborhoods and clear the snow. Winter pothole patching, I touched on that. We use a cold mix product. There's some challenges with that. You've seen us out repair or temporarily repair a patch hole, and then a couple weeks later it comes back again. So it's we put layers and layers as needed over it to keep it. And then sometimes, it's more than a pothole; it's more like a road failure. We've seen that along Donner Lake, which required much more than just our winter patching. It needed additional work that got done in the spring. So striping and roadway markings, our priority there is to hit the center lines first. Combination with engineering and public works, we've installed a good portion of the center line striping with thermoplastic inlaid striping, which lasts a lot longer. There is some touch up every season with what we do with paint. We paint over the areas that get worn off and do it that way. Then we hit the bike lanes and edge lines, turn lane markings, and trail, and then the trail center line. As far as roadway markings, crosswalks, we try to hit the school zones first. And on a season, we might repaint the school zone crossings twice in a season, and then the rest of the crosswalks as needed. But they get repainted every season, and then if we get a chance to redo them again, we'll do it. Major intersection stop bars, that helps people not blow through a stop sign. They get the line to stop at, and then bike lane stenciling. We also do street sweeping. That occurs throughout the winter during dry periods to pick up traction sand, which helps improve air quality and water quality. And then we do a big sweep up in the spring to try to recover as much of the traction sand that we put out all winter. And we do a pretty good job. We get about 85 to 90% recovery rate from what we put out. So, it ends up in the ditches. We dig it out of the ditches, everything we sweep up. And a lot of that cleanup directly affects our ability to do the roadway striping and roadway markings. So that's all I have for roadway maintenance. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to talk a little about the trail stuff. So the town maintains about 4 miles of sidewalk in town. That's not all the sidewalk in town. We maintain the stuff that's in the assessment districts and the CFDs, so like Brickletown or down in on Donner Pass Road and Gateway, or sidewalks that are in the Union Pacific right of way, or the Caltrans right of way under certain agreements that we have with Caltrans. And then otherwise, it's adjacent property owners' responsibilities. We maintain about 22 miles of Class 1 paved trails. That includes the 8.5 miles that we added into our system last year when we took on maintenance of trails that were historically maintained by private entities. It also includes some of the trails that were included in the community facility districts in Georgia and Coldstream. There are 6 trail bridges, plus 4 more that will come into play with the Coldstream development, the trail system there, as well as the Legacy Trail Phase 4A project, and 6,200 linear feet of railing that we maintained to keep people safe. So we also did a calculation of how much landscaping gets maintained. And although maintaining the landscaping does have some safety benefits in terms of sight distance and keeping the travel way clear, it also just sort of shows that this competes for staff resources, with the trail maintenance. We're doing landscape maintenance and we're also doing trail maintenance throughout the summer. So this past summer, I think one of the coolest things is that our staff went and replaced the railing that's out on Trout Creek Trail. You can see the before and after. The railing on the left was having problems. It was falling over. And the one that we built's not only more aesthetically pleasing, but provides a better, safer railing for sure. It included 4,800 feet of linear of pipe, 680 feet of flat stock, 1-inch flat stock, and then 19,000 feet of cabling. So it was over a half mile of a railing that was put in. We did Brett's staff did a lot of pavement patching on the trails this summer. They really focused on the larger cracks that were going to cause issues for snow removal this winter, just because, trying to use resources appropriately and prioritize. There was 41,000 pounds of asphalt patch that went in. And then there was also some paving projects that actually the engineering staff led to actually repave some of the trails, the trail system, to help improve some of the cracks that were out there and the overall condition of the trail. Other maintenance that occurs is the snow removal and de-icing of the trails and the sweeping as well in the spring to clean them up, and miscellaneous repairs. Other things that we do on the trails is the trash pickup once a week and refilling pet stations, things like that. Some of the future goals for next year is to do more crack maintenance on our trails. And that's just to more focus on some of the smaller cracks. Like I said, this past year, we really focused on the larger ones. There will be more paving projects on trails in the future. There's a goal to reestablish some of the decomposed granite and base shoulders along some of the trails. Some of them are in need of repair. More vegetation clearing. We're looking at maybe some new equipment that might help facilitate and make that a more efficient process. And not only does that improve the public safety and the travel way, but it also has a safety impact associated with fire fuel mitigation. We will be taking on maintenance of additional trail segments in Coldstream and then Legacy Trail Phase 4A when that's complete, looking at whether additional equipment is needed to take on that additional mileage. Additional sidewalks we'll be taking on with the West River Street. Some of that will occur this winter. More will be added with next year with the project being completed. And also we're looking at maybe doing some rail. We're keeping an eye on the rail out on Glenshire to see if anything needs to be replaced out there. The safety rail on the switchbacks up to Glenshire on the Legacy Trail. In fiscal year 23-24, 2 additional positions were added. And so that actually, we did not really get full staffed until this month. So next year we'll be reevaluating how that works. And of course, during the budget process, we'll reevaluate our staffing levels. With that, I'll pass it over to Lisa.
Hello, Lisa Madden, Lieutenant with the Truckee Police Department. I'm going to go over a couple things that the police department has done in regards to local roads. So some education that we've done. We continue to provide road safety information, specifically pedestrian bicycle safety, to our children. Last year, our traffic unit and our SRO went out to the schools and did some presentations on bike safety, pedestrian safety, and just overall roadway safety. In 2021, we were awarded a grant, which we got 30 car seats and 100 helmets, bicycle helmets. And so with that, in 2022, we had a bike rodeo. This was, we gave out helmets, and we also had a bicycle safety course for kids to ride on. As you can see in the pictures, just trying to teach kids some bike safety, roadway safety, and it was a very fun event. And then also in 2022, we had a car seat safety event. We partnered with the Lions Club and CHP, and we went out to the new rec center when they did their health fair, and we installed car seats. We checked car seats, and so in 2022, we installed 25 new child seats. This was a combination of ours and CHP's, and we checked 12 car seats. And then in 2023, we continued our bicycle education at the schools. As mentioned above, we handed out helmets to children in the community that needed them. And then we also continued our tradition of the car seat safety event, and we gave out 17 new child seats and then checked 23 car seats. And all of these car seats and helmets were handed out to local community members. And we're always looking for additional grants to help with safety of our community members. We also have our changeable message signs, which are our big orange flashing signs. They assist us with educating the public in things like no parking on roadways in the wintertime. We've utilized it in the wintertime to let people know when changes are required on Northwoods Boulevard, and that's assisted in the resource strain that it takes to get all the cars back off of Northwoods. So it's been very successful. We're going to continue to do it this next year, as well as in the summertime, no parking in bike lanes. So it's just that additional signage that helps people understand that, we don't want people parking in the bike lanes. And then also we have speed feedback signs. And so these are little signs that we could put up there. They give you a feedback of how fast you're going. And so we've seen success with that. You drive past a speed limit sign day in and day out, and you don't really realize how fast you're going until you have that feedback sign telling you you're going too fast. So we've put those up in places around town, and we see success with those. So those are some of the education things that we've been doing. On our enforcement side, we've changed the way that we have received traffic enforcement requests. So it used to be we kind of, someone would call dispatch, or they'd come into the front office. Now we've funneled it to one location. If you have a traffic enforcement request, you can go to our website and fill out this form. It gets submitted and it goes straight to our traffic team. And we've done some internal processes in our police department, and we strive to respond to those requests within 24 hours. We work with the community member as much as we can, and we work alongside them to try and solve whatever problem it is. So we use our JMAR, which is a box that collects data, speeds, and how many cars that come by a specific area for a specific time frame. Typically, it's around 7 days, and we see if there is an issue. Typically, it's with speed, and so we'll see if there is an issue or if it's a perception issue. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. If it's not a perception issue, then we focus on some targeted enforcement in the area. And so we've had success with that. We call them traffic enforcement zones internally. We send that out to our entire police department so that all officers are aware of what areas that need more attention and focus. And so we've seen that officers are going out to those areas and trying to problem solve with our community members. We also do school zone enforcement, crosswalk enforcement, and other enforcements when we see a need. So we do specific enforcements when need be. We do have a fully staffed traffic unit, which has been really helpful in the success of being out on the roads and being able to make some change and keep our community safe. Here's some data collection. Like I mentioned, the JMAR data, we keep that data in our system so that if we do have a request, we can go and see if there is data already captured. If not, then we'll go out there and capture that data. But we do keep that on hand for reference. You can see our accident data. This is our reported data. So your fender bender in a parking lot wouldn't be in this, but any accident that a report was taken. And you can see it's fairly consistent over the years. Our DUIs, you can see that we had a dip in 2021 and 2022, and then a spike in 2023. This doesn't mean there's more DUI drivers on the road, but we went through a staffing shortage for a while, and now that we're getting back to our fully staffed levels or close to it, we're able to be more proactive. And so DUIs are really a proactive enforcement type of stop, and so we're seeing higher statistics there. But also, weather can change it, calls for service. If we're busy with other things, we're not out on the street. Seeing DUIs. And then you can see down below the DUI collisions. 2021 we had higher numbers, but 2022, 2023 are fairly consistent. And then our citations, you can see in 2023 we had some very proactive officers out there. Like I said, staffing levels, calls for service. We're out there and making stops and trying to make sure people are being safe on the road. Our citations are up. So slow down. And then finally, our trails. You all are aware of the municipal code update that occurred over the summertime, which included the 15-mile-per-hour speed limit on our trails. We conducted a needs assessment over the issues that were happening on the trails, and this really came out as the top solution for our problems. And so we relied heavily on the community and their input, and that was the outcome. So as you can see, Officer O'Brien on the Zero motorcycle on the Legacy Trail. Last summer, we increased patrols out there. There was the 15-mile-per-hour speed limit was not in effect, so it was really the presence and just an education at that point. We are incorporating Zero patrols and trail patrols in our future plans with our traffic unit. We're getting both our traffic officers trained on the motorcycle so they can go out there and educate because there's going to be a lot of changes with the 15-mile-per-hour speed limit. And then in the springtime, we'll have a communication plan that will come out, which will, we'll have social media and other ways to let everybody know that there is a 15-mile-per-hour speed limit on our trails. And then the last is that we are always exploring technology to assist us in safety for the community. One of those is looking at maybe some sort of feedback sign for the trail so that people know how fast 15 miles per hour actually feels. And, having a limit on how fast it'll go, it'll just tell you to slow down. But, that's a way of education. And so we're looking into things like that, but always looking at new technology to help us and keep our community safe.
Okay, I'll wrap it up a little bit with some of the things that we're working on in terms in engineering on really like on the infrastructure side of things. So I've talked about this a little. Recent trail projects, the Coldstream Trail. We're working on Legacy Trail Phase 4A. We'll get finished next year. In the future, some trails we're working on is a connector that would connect the Jorger Drive Trail to the Legacy Trail through the Review Sports Park. There's a project in the budget. We're working with the Tawadona Association on the Tawadona Trail. That's a trail that would connect the Trout Creek Trail where it enters Northwoods and sort of travel somewhat parallel to Northwoods Boulevard, potentially all the way to the the Alder Creek Adventure Park. What's interesting about this one is it would work through a reimbursement agreement likely where the Tawadona staff would take the lead on the design and we would reimburse them using TSSA 1 funds. Legacy Trail 4's Phase 4B is on the horizon, and then the Trails and Bikeways Active Transportation Plan update, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. And again, continuing to include paving projects in our CIP projects, future paving projects when we're paving roads, paving trails. The West River Streetscape project is under construction, more sidewalks, crosswalks, raised medians. In the future, we're also working on some more trails in the West River Street Park, the reimagined Bridge Street intersections, putting in signals at the Bridge Street intersections will improve pedestrian crossings and visibility, and also giving them time on the traffic signal to just make that a safer crossing for them. We're still working on the Jaboom Street Pedestrian Improvement Project. And we just recently got word that we received a grant to do a downtown railroad pedestrian crossing feasibility study. So that would be connecting sort of the Mill Street area to the Spring Street area on the western side of downtown. Roundabouts are called out in our local roads safety plan specifically as an important countermeasure, and that ties into a lot of our other policies. We recently built the Coldstream Donner Pass Road roundabout and the one at Church Street in Glenshire. We have plans in the budget to start working on one at 267 Brockway and Soaring. And then the 5-year budget also includes some potential work at the Donner Pass Road and Northwoods roundabout. And this is in the local road safety plan because roundabouts they do reduce overall crashes. They reduce the severity of crashes. They're better for pedestrians and bicycles. So that's why they're in our local road safety plan and highlighted. Just in case you didn't know, we have 14 roundabouts in town, and we've got about just that same amount still left to build. So there's more to come. Some other just miscellaneous projects we're working on. We recently installed some of the more permanent speed feedback signs on Northwoods and Shushing entering the Tawadona subdivision and on Glenshire Drive. we put these yellow signal backplates on some of the back of the signals. They make the signals easier to see. They might also have some advantage if we ever lose power, just making them more visible if there's a power outage. Of course, we have the trail stenciling project. We plan to try to do that again as maybe a volunteer effort this spring, summer, because I think it was well received. And we're going to, every year we do an update where we take the collision data that's collected and put it on a map so we can use it to evaluate high crash areas. What's next? We'll continue to work on streetscape projects, evaluate the centerline striping and potential additional messaging. There's also that discussion about what are the rules with the line? Do you walk left? Do you walk right? So that's something that we're looking into what other agencies are doing. We're working with the police department on updating the system for recording accident reports where they put the GIS coordinates in the form. And the benefit of that is it will really automate our ability to put it in a map. And so right now what we do is we can get close, but we have to do hand adjustments. But if we have the lat long in there, the coordinates, it's a much easier process. And that allows us to continue to evaluate where high crash areas are. And then hopefully we might come up with some additional outreach strategies as part of the DEI plan that is underway. And then the active transportation plan update. We are in initial stages of talking about an RFP to get a consultant on board, hope to release that in early 2024. It would identify maybe new locations for trails and sidewalks, but also prioritize them. Look at other ways to address bicycle and pedestrian facilities throughout town. There will probably be a discussion of bike boxes, colored bike lanes, class 4 bike lanes in there, and also an equity component will definitely be included in this one. So also we're just going to update it so make sure that it meets all the the current state and federal requirements that an active transportation plan has to have. Okay, so with that, I think we're done. We appreciate your time. Thanks for listening while we went through all the things that we're doing for local roads and the safety of roads and trails.
Thank you very much. And typically we go through all the presentations. I do feel like we just heard a lot of information. So we'll take questions on this one and open it up to public comment on this one before we go to the next presentations. Do any council members have any questions or comments? Councilmember Henderson?
Thank you so much. I just have one, Lieutenant Madden, for you. Just because you specifically mentioned Northwoods and the changeable message signs, I'm just curious, what triggers us putting the sign, like that chains are required to go up Northwoods? Is it just like align with when chain control goes on I-80, or what does that look like? And part two of that is, and how are we enforcing that?
So yes, it is when chains are required on the roadways, we put the signs out. There is an actual sign on Northwoods that we can manually flip, but no one can read it when it's snowing out. So we use the CMS sign. What was your second question?
Sorry, just how do we enforce it? Like when chain control goes on I-80, every car has to kind of get cleared to go through.
Right. So we can enforce it just like we can the freeway. Chains are required. Typically, it's us having to respond to a car that won't make it up Northwoods, so it makes it a little easier. But yeah, we definitely find ourselves on that face in Northwoods a lot. Last year, like I said, we've seen an improvement because some people really do read the signs and take it to heart that their car probably won't make it up there. So yes, we can enforce it if need be, but typically it's more of the let's get the car out of the roadway and head you back down the hill and solve the problem.
And is a citation issued if it says chains are required and people can't make it up the hill because they don't have chains or snow tires?
We can.
And they're causing traffic congestion and delays and accidents?
We can. We definitely have that ability. Like I said, typically during those types of scenarios, we are so busy that we're just trying to clear the roadway to open it back up to people. But we absolutely have the ability to do that. And we have.
Councilmember Zabriskie?
Yeah, I think I have three questions. They might be all for Becky. The first one is the local road safety program. where I should tell people to look when they ask me, what's the town doing to make e-bike traffic safer? Besides the new ordinance.
Besides the
New ordinance.
I think that's really just an education component. Some of the stuff that Lieutenant Madden talked about in terms of educating the youth, and I think some of our trail stenciling projects are can provide messages on the trails, the speed limits. So I think for the most part, it's sort of an education piece.
Okay.
And providing more facilities, more facilities, more trails for people to use.
But e-bikes are included in the local road safety plan. Or not?
That is a really good question. I'm not sure how much they were called out at that time. So something I could look into.
Okay. Then I won't make such a big deal about it. And then for reporting cracks, do people go to that general complaint form on the town's website? Is that still?
The C-Click Fix.
Yeah, okay. And then my last question is, the new traffic enforcement form is also where people would go to complain about e-bikes going too fast in a particular spot.
The traffic enforcement request is typically for there's speeding cars or people aren't stopping at stop signs. If there's a location that there's an e-bike problem, e-bikers aren't stopping at stop signs and things like that. That we actually have a location, but a general concern would just go through our dispatch.
Okay, thank you.
We also have the trail incident reporting tool still too. That
Questions over here or comments? Councilmember Cliffstead?
I have a few. So you, Lieutenant Madden, you were just talking about the traffic enforcement requests. What do you want to see people reporting on there? What would help you and your department effectively enforce this safety plan that we should be reporting to?
Any concern that they have, like I mentioned, speed's typically the most common, but there are any safety concerns, really, roadway safety concerns. That's what, we want to work with that person to make sure that this is, like I mentioned before, there could be a perception issue. Some roadways are narrow and it looks like cars are going faster than they are. In those types of situations, we have a traffic officer who's willing to go out and shoot radar with the citizen to just educate. Sometimes there are issues. Cars are going fast, and we need to do some targeted enforcement in that area. So really any safety concerns specific to roadways,
Okay, so if there's
traffic violations that are
mostly looking at traffic violations and then things that are like, I can't see through this crosswalk because there's brush in the way, that's more of an engineering report, C-Click Fix.
right, that would be more appropriate. Yeah.
I want to just try to make sure our community knows where to go to report what, because I think there are eyes and ears out there, right? We can't be everywhere, so I want to make sure we're being helpful.
And I would say if there are any questions, to call either our front office. They can direct the community on what the best resource is.
Okay, perfect. That's always the default. The speed feedback signs, I know they're telling you how fast you're going. Are they collecting data on that too, or just providing that feedback?
a couple of them do have the ability to collect data, but we're not typically grabbing data from them. The new ones that we put in, I don't actually think collect data. What we would typically do is just use the JMAR boxes that Lisa mentioned.
Okay. And then this last one is very broad, and I apologize, but, in general, we have some pinch points on Donner Pass Road around our school sites. And is there anything specific in this road safety plan or our engineering plans that are to address that?
I mean, I would, in terms of when you say pinch points, in terms of a lot of pedestrian traffic and
It's that very dangerous combination that I think your first graphic really shows or illustrates well, is that when school is particularly getting out, a little bit when it's starting, but primarily at lunch for the high school, and when school is getting out, you have pedestrians and a whole flood of cars and existing cars on the road. And I, because I've had kids go through school, I drive it often. It's right by my house. There's just, to me, that is an incredibly challenging situation, and it happens a lot of days a year, 200 and some odd days a year while school is in session. So I know there's a traffic unit, but I know we can't dedicate staff to that every single afternoon. So and I know we put the median there, the pedestrian safety zone, which I think has really helped. The kids don't always use it, So just wondering if there's a next step to that plan, or is this kind of the best we think we can get?
I mean, I think we're constantly kind of evaluating, and we receive requests all the time to look at things. Potentially a roundabout at Northwoods Donner Pass Road would provide some more benefit. I do think the Envision DPR project, with all the improvements we made with wider sidewalks and the facilities out there, did help quite a lot. So
It did, yeah.
But in terms of the local road safety plan, aside from just the evaluation of the data as we collect it, I can't recall that there's just any specific projects that are called out in that area particularly.
Okay.
So.
But I think that you're right, continuing or finishing that roundabout and continuing that DPR sidewalk on the other side that's wider will help as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just add a little bit to that. Whoops. Down here at the end. For anyone who can't see, Dan Wilkins, Public Works Director. So the project we did a few years ago to add the sidewalks, I'll call them the short median islands, that was a part of what we were envisioning to be probably a 3 to 4 phase master plan of that corridor. So you may recall there was a kind of I'll call it a corridor master plan that was developed that showed an ultimate build out of that corridor that would have a roundabout at Northwoods Donner Pass Road, a roundabout at Donner Pass Road 89 South, continuous medians on Donner Pass Road, and 3 what I'll call mini roundabouts at the public street intersections in between the big roundabouts I just described. At the time that project was put together, it was clear to us, at least at the staff level, that the community so what it would have done is eliminated left turns along the bulk of Donner Pass Road, accommodated those left turns at intermediate roundabouts so people could still get to businesses on the opposite side of the road. From a pedestrian standpoint, what that would do is instead of right now, we're trying to encourage pedestrians to cross the road at specific locations where we put the small medians in where they really weren't interrupting traffic flow. What that would do is provide a median the length of the road, so if pedestrians are crossing at locations other than crosswalks, they would still gain the benefit of that median protection. So that is a direction that is documented that we could go to eventually. That's not something that's in our immediate planning, though.
And probably pending the point where we're ready to build at least the Northwoods roundabout.
Yeah, that's what, from a staff perspective, that would be a logical next step. The Donner Pass Road 89 South roundabout would be a logical next step. And then, whether or not we want to get more extensive with the medians, which then makes it more difficult to make left turns and start doing these mini roundabouts, that would be a pretty significant community conversation, I suspect.
I agree. I do recall that plan. Thank you for reminding us of it, Dan. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Pallavi?
Yeah, just really quickly, and I don't know if this is maybe for 7.2, but since you brought it up, Becky, I was just quickly wondering, timing on the Legacy Trail 4A, but also the Coldstream Trail, because that one seems to have been done for a while, but we're not adopting either of those for this winter. We're going to give them another season.
Legacy Trail Phase 4A, the bridge still needs to get installed across the Truckee River. A lot of the trail is in, but there's still some work that needs to be done. There's a piece of the paving there's a section that's not paved, so that won't be open this winter, but we'll be opening it next summer. Coldstream, you're right. So the Coldstream Trail was built, and it was, open for people to use. The town has not accepted it for maintenance because there's a couple things. It's not officially accepted by the town because there's some work that needs to be done on the railing and the bridge. So until that work is done, we're not going to be taking it over for maintenance. The developer is working on that right now, and it's hopeful that will be done soon. So, but no promises for this winter.
I think I just get asked that question in the community on a weekly basis. So thank you for giving me that answer. That's all from me.
Thank you. I don't have any questions, but excuse me, you guys got me choked up. No, I appreciate these updates because, often we put plans out, and I know a critique of government in general is you just do a lot of plans and what happens. So it's just really great to see this plan in action. And I love the stats too, Riley, the 85% of salt or sand picked up at the end of the year. That's impressive and appreciated by all of us. And then Lieutenant Madden, I know, and Chief Renfro, the Sierra Meadows HOA has been working on some concerns over speeding, and you guys have been incredibly receptive. And I've heard that from HOA board members. So just want to highlight you guys are doing a great job on that. So thank you for that. So with that, we'll open it up to public comment on this item. Would anyone like to make a public comment? If so, please come on up to the podium. Seeing none, we will close public comment. And thank you all very much for your presentation and your hard work.
Thank you.
All right, next up, presentation 5.3, Land Use Application Quarterly Report.
So while Danielle is making her way up here, this is a new presentation for us. So we thought it might be helpful and to share some of the open applications we have and give you a sense of the work we're doing. That's why we did a presentation to see first if this is helpful and a good use of our time. And then feedback if this is an appropriate style or not would be great.
Thanks, Jen. So this is new, in part because I think there's been some community interest about what happens behind the scenes in the planning shop. And so because this is the first one, I took a step back and tried to look at it from a community member's perspective of what's unique and interesting about land use applications. Because frankly, not everyone knows what they are or what planners do. So this is really an opportunity for us to highlight that. So starting with some of the basics, I think it's helpful to understand that these permits are really in place so that we can look at development and land use. And because we've just come out of a general plan update process, this isn't necessarily new, but it's still a good refresher for us to talk about it because we have these permits in place not only to implement the general plan, but then to get sort of that granular level when someone's coming in with an individual property to kind of help them understand what they can and can't do with it. So it's a bigger picture, and I think when people kind of look at it from that perspective of they're really there for us to keep that constant kind of view of what's happening in the community and implementing the community's vision, maybe it's not as scary as some people think it is. So that's my goal. But it's also different than a building permit because I think some people get confused too of, well, why do I have to go through a separate process? I'm already going to be submitting a building permit. This seems redundant. And they're very different. Although our building permit process does focus on life safety, they are really sort of the catch-all for all of the different approvals that have to happen. And so the planning process that we do with our land use permits is only one aspect of what gets checked with a building permit. So they're two different things. In an ideal world, we would have all of our land use review and all of our permits for land use kind of addressed first, and then you would come in for your building permit, and that would make it very streamlined because then the planners would just be going through and saying, yes, you've done all these things, we've checked it to make sure you're in the right zone, that your use is allowed. that you don't have any issues for us to address. We already talked about that ahead of time through your land use permit, and now you're coming in for your building permit process, and it's very fast. Doesn't always happen, although that's in an ideal world where we want to be. And over the last, I would say, 5 years, we've been sort of helping people understand, let's address it first before you submit a building permit. So we're creating a bit of a stronger filter and making sure that we're not sort of stacking up our building permit process with projects that also need to go through a separate land use application process. Beyond that, we have very specific language in our development code, which I put on the screen here, which really just talks about that in order for you to pretty much do anything within the town of Truckee, you should come and talk to a planner first when it's related to use, business, establishing a business, like where can I go? Anything beyond, gee, I'm moving into my single family home. I mean, kind of at that level, it's good to have a conversation because a lot of times people just don't know that because we don't have a business license program, our rules are different than other jurisdictions that they might have worked in, that it's just very helpful to have that initial conversation with the planner of, what should I be able to do? Where can I do it? What I'm proposing, does that work? What do I need to know? What type of land use permit might I need? So I think that's just kind of a helpful context to understand. We're looking at what the permit requirements are. Is this allowed? What are the standards that would need to apply if it's something that you're proposing that's new? And then very, very basic, is it a legal parcel? And if not, we've got a separate process to talk to you about that with. So this was a lot of manual data for me to collect because unfortunately our permit tracking system isn't as fancy, I would say, as I wished it would be for us to kind of look at all of our data. So hopefully we'll get there at some point where we can just run reports and some of this will be easier. But to start off, there was a lot of manual data collection on our side, which really is, what are our land use permits that we have? So if someone were to come in, what are we looking at? And believe it or not, we have more than 35, which everyone's kind of heard of use permit or, I have a sign plan, or maybe I'm doing a home occupation, but there's a lot more than that. And I only put some of the, more kind of commonly known ones on the screen here. But there's a lot. And so that's a lot of different things for the planners to be able to communicate with the community about because there's just such a variety. It also means that at any given time, when applications are coming in, we're processing something that's very simple from a sign plan that's kind of at the ministerial level to something that's very complicated, like something in the rail yard, for example, which has hundreds of units, has an adopted master plan. It's very complicated. And you'll see from some of the charts that I put together that there is still, even within all of that, some consistency in what the planners process. So I mentioned that we have kind of that mix of simple projects, more complicated projects. But within that too, there's different review authorities for those types of permits. So some are at the staff level, and then we go all the way up to the town council review. We also have our Historic Preservation Advisory Commission that reviews minor and major projects that are within our historic district, and then they make a recommendation to whoever the ultimate review authority is. So the planner's guide through those discussions of, is it something that exempt? So if you were coming in, for example, to change a like-for-like material, like your roof was composition shingle and you just want to update it to a new composition shingle, that doesn't require a special land use permit. You get directed to go to the building permit counter, and then they can help you do that over the counter. But there are a lot of permits where if they're going beyond something that's a like-for-like replacement, that they'll be able to come back and be able to talk to a planner. Let's see what else we have. So a little bit about just the workload in general is that it's pretty unpredictable. So we don't always know who's coming in. We don't know what type of project they're going to submit. We don't know how frequent they're going to come in. So one day we might get 5 applications in one day, and then at another time we might get nothing for a week, for example. So it's just part of how it goes in the planning world, that it's just unpredictable, similar to what it is with our building permits, that they don't always know either what they're getting in any given day. So this chart that I have on here, we kind of took a 10-year snapshot of the total number of land use permit applications that were submitted to the planning department. So this isn't necessarily the number of how many got approved or denied or withdrawn. This is just a snapshot to show you kind of on a 10-year time frame what that number looks like. And it is kind of interesting to see that the numbers way back in 2013 were quite a bit lower than they are today, but they are stabilizing to some degree. So looking at 2023, and I will disclose too that this only goes till about November 1st. So this isn't like the full year, but I think it still gives a pretty good sense of this year's activity. If you just look at the pie chart, 3/4 of the permits that come in are staff level review permits. So that really is the majority of the work that the planners are doing, is that they're helping sort of business owners, they're helping community members that have questions about things, that have smaller types of permits. So it's minor projects that still require land use permit, like a zoning clearance, something like at that level. But I think before I put this together, I didn't even realize like how high of a percentage that was of the types of permits that our planners are processing. And also on the flip side, how few the council look at. You really are only looking at easement abandonments, which are really on your consent agenda, and then on average 1 to 2 appeals that you get per year. Everything else is development code amendments, or we're doing our CIPs or things like that. So your land use review is really happening between the staff and your planning commission, and then in sort of that other sandwiched area, me as either my director role or as the zoning administrator. This was just another way to look at it too, is sort of in a shorter time frame, in a 5-year time frame, kind of looking at them side by side. It just, again, reinforces that the majority of the reviews happening with the staff, and that these numbers are fairly stable. So when I talked about that earlier, there isn't a huge fluctuation. I mean, I would say 2019 was a little bit different, that we had more staff level reviews happening, but I mean, you're still talking about 20 permits on average that the planning commission's kind of looking at in any given year, and a really small percentage that the council looks at. And then for this data set, it did take some time to look at approved, but again, because our staff level reviews, it would be a very kind of manual data collection on our part to go through and say like, hey, Yumi, how many, ministerial reviews did you do and approve, this year? We'd have to go through project by project, so that's a little bit more difficult. But if you take that out and you kind of just look at zoning administrator, planning commission, and council, it's not a huge percentage that are sort of approved on any given year for those projects, but again, because most of them are happening at the staff level. So if I were to project and look at what I assumed were for the staff level ones, like a lot of those are done usually within, I would say, like 2 to 4 months, depending on the permit type. Some things are much faster if it's like a zoning verification where they're just trying to figure out they need that filled out for going into a new lease space or something like that, then those are much quicker, but that just gives you a snapshot. And ultimately, we've talked about this before too, of what contributes to the timeline factors. And I didn't put on here overall workload, but I think that's part of it too, is that there's only so many hours in the day, and if we get a lot of on-call shifts where the planners are answering a lot of questions from the public in a given day, that's less time that they're spending on processing the land use applications, or if there's a deadline that's happening for something that's more of a long-range project, then that takes away time from it too. But in general, if you just kind of peel that away and look at the land use application review process, things will move faster if we have complete submittals, if the projects are consistent, and if they have a good agent. What we are finding fairly consistently is that there's a lot of new people working on projects that haven't done land use review before, and so there's a learning curve in there, which adds to the timeframes. So whether they're not understanding, some of the questions that the planners have had or something like that, or they're just taking longer to respond, those all add to the timeframes for the review process. Another thing too is because we've done quite a bit of changes to our development code over the last 5 years, that just making sure people check in and make sure that they're looking at the correct code will also save time too, because even though we're updating them on the website and we're making those notifications, I think people forget and they sort of tend to pull the one off the shelf that they've been using for a while. And sometimes they change, every 3 months or every 6 months, depending on how fast we're doing those modifications. And so we just want to make sure that people are looking at the right one when they have these larger projects. This is actually my last slide. So this was a kind of short and sweet presentation, but to take a look at what we have in the hopper right now, we have, and this is as of November 1st, 108 total applications that we're processing. And of those, 23 are preliminary applications. And I want to highlight that a little bit, just because our preliminary applications could be anything from I want to do it in addition to my house, but I don't know where I can put it. Can you help me figure out my setbacks? To like right now we have one for Truckee overhead door because they want to add workforce housing. So it's a pretty big extreme of types of projects that come in. And depending on what we get for those are actually one of the more time-consuming projects because what we ask people to do is just give us your list of questions and whatever information you want us to look at so that we can help you with the questions that you have before you come in. But they're really time-consuming for us. Hopefully with the idea that when they do come in for their formal application, that they've kind of checked all the boxes and all the issues have kind of been knocked off under that initial review so that it's a much more streamlined process for them. In those review processes also, we have the other agencies comment. So what that also helps do is say something comes up where they didn't realize they had to do additional utility improvements or they had something to address with Truckee Fire, for example, they can go work on that and try and come up with their solutions for that before they submit. So then again, it's not bogging down the process. But I think this just gives you kind of a snapshot of where we are today. Now, if I were to run this report again tomorrow, this would look totally different. And the next day, totally different because every day something's coming off the plate, something's coming in. It's always in flux. So I think this was just a good way for us to kind of highlight that the planners juggle lots of different different projects and that they're constantly working to streamline process to make it more efficient and easier for people to understand. And that includes some of the development code amendments that we've made over the past 5 years, where we've taken something that, say, used to require a minor use permit and removed that requirement out. And now if you fit within sort of a range, like you can just do it automatically. You don't even have to go through a secondary process. So those are things that as we're working with the community over time, we're able to make more efficient and make it easier for them too. So more clarity, which we know is easier for everyone, and just more predictability. So that's where we're at, and it's very short and sweet. And if this is something that we want to do consistently, we can probably build on it over time to add some more details. I obviously didn't get into any of the specifics of projects or anything like that that's in, but it does give you kind of a flavor. That's all I have.
Great job. Sorry. Do you want to take over for a second, Vice Mayor Pallavi?
Yeah, you do what you got to do. We hope you feel better soon. We'll go to questions just quickly, just to follow along. Councilmember Klofstad, any questions for Danielle?
Yeah, I have a couple. Is there a way or even a benefit to reduce that number of, you said approximately 35 different types of permits? Would there be any benefit in trying to consolidate some of those to simplify that process?
Potentially, but they're wildly different, which is one of the things that I was kind of noticing, that we have, an outdoor dining permit, or if you're going to open a dispensary for cannabis, like there's just some things that wouldn't
specific.
Yeah, they wouldn't combine. But the good thing about a lot of them is that they're like a one-page checklist, and some of them are truly a very like quick review for staff, so like a sign plan or things like that. Or some of the larger projects will come in and they'll have 4 or 5 of these, as part of one project, and so we're processing them all concurrently to be able to do that. I think where we did try and streamline is we went from our zoning clearance process, which is really just trying to figure out, if you're going to open a business, like where are you at? What does that look like, to something that's called a zoning verification, which I think is kind of our take at doing a bit of a business license, to just kind of say like, oh, there was a similar business to yours there before, so we'll just check that. And
kind of the short form.
It's a short form, yeah. And some businesses need that to be able to do their banking and other things. So that's been really helpful.
And so if they're coming in with a combination of things, what category does that then fall in?
Oftentimes when we accept it, we just put it under sort of the highest level. So whether it's a use permit or a development permit or something like that. And
so it's a use permit with a sign permit and maybe an outdoor dining permit.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what also makes it hard when we kind of talk about this in our data set, is that I'm giving you sort of what we've categorized them, but a lot of them do have multiple permits. And so these numbers could fluctuate depending on what the individual planner categorized it as.
And I imagine the quality of information you can provide when people call in to ask you, I want to do this, what's required, depends upon how much information they can provide.
That's very true. And so I like to think that we're good at sleuthing out things. So we'll often ask questions of them. So even though they're asking questions of us, we'll kind of ask them additional questions to get more information, because people don't often know the questions they should be asking. And so that's a little bit of the expertise that the planners have in just having done this for a while, that can kind of feel out, well, why are you asking that question? Tell me more.
Yeah.
So that's helpful.
I imagine so. Similar on the bullet that you had on there, reliance on staff to act as project agent. Those are circumstances where you're really kind of training that person, because this isn't what they do every day. They're just coming in to try to get a permit for something.
Yeah, and I'll give you a recent example of that. So we may have some designers who are used to doing single-family design, and they want to get into doing sort of the multifamily design on Northwoods, where it's a 4 or 5 unit project. Well, the standards are different. And when you're building a house, you kind of just look at setbacks, site coverage, height. When you get into doing a multifamily project, you have engineering requirements about drainage and site coverage and snow storage and other things, and they're just often unaware. So that's where we have to kind of walk through, hey, we noticed that you're doing this type of project. You haven't done one of those before. Here's some of the things that you need to look at. Maybe you should do a preliminary application for us so that we can walk through some of that. But it does take, that's why I say the preliminary applications take a lot of time, because that's where most of those conversations happen.
Okay, that's helpful. This has been very helpful, by the way. Thank you so much for this. Last question. On some of the monthly permit reports, I see the exact same business multiple times. Why is that? Why would there be a circumstance where there's one business and it's got 5 different permits in process?
So you're talking about the monthly building reports? Mm-hmm. It just depends on how they submit them. So there's no real limitation that, if they are under timelines with different like subcontractors, they might decide to do like their plumbing one first because that's who's available, and they'll kind of parse them out. But it's really their choice. They don't have to put everything under one single permit.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Zabriskie, any questions?
On things like the lot line adjustments, do you tend to have one planner who focuses on that work, or do you spread it out?
No, but that's a good question. So some other jurisdictions really have planners kind of in different boxes. So you might have one who only does current planning and one who does long-range planning. And we don't do that. We make sure that our planners have the opportunity to do everything, and that includes all the variety of land use permit applications that we have. So most planners have at least one lot line adjustment that they're working on at any given time while they're doing other things. It's just kind of how we can keep them having some smaller projects while they're managing their larger projects at the same time.
Are preliminary applications ever required, or are they simply an opportunity for someone to get an early review of what they're thinking about?
They're not required, but I think for a lot of projects, if we at least know that someone's coming in with something that's a larger project, we will strongly suggest that it's to their benefit to submit one.
Are you able to say how much time staff has to spend on applications, either because they're incomplete or because they're inconsistent with the development code or other regulations?
That can vary. So if it's a smaller project, I would say, we could spend like a month. But if we have something at the scale of a rail yard application and it's inconsistent with the master plan, then that could take 6 months, a year, because we'll be working through, multiple design changes at one time. So it can vary widely depending on the project.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thank you. And Councilmember Henderson.
Just one. Danielle, just because you mentioned, I think you said the software isn't as sophisticated as you might sometimes like. Is that something that we need to be thinking about from a resource perspective for like budgeting next year to support you in the department?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at something that can provide a dashboard option, and that includes for our building department and our planning department, that I think people would like to have an understanding of, where is my permit in the process? And we don't have that functionality now. So It is something that we are going to look into, but we also want to make sure that whatever we look into is still compatible with the system that we have in place too, because we rely on that already. So it might just be sort of an add-on thing, but I think we're interested because having good tools will just make that transparency easier.
That would be something too with our operational assessment that we would ask our consultants to help provide some insight on.
Great. Thank you. This was really helpful. Thank you, Daniel.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that was actually my only question too, Councilmember Henderson. Having experienced a few, and I actually would just, for the record, I think it's a little bit larger, and I'm glad we're going to talk about it during the operational assessment. But it's not just the dashboard. I think there's some other just sort of operational issues, payments, things like that. You know, the sort of E-Suite program, it's getting a little old. That maybe. And I don't see it on our work plan, which is also why I think it's important to bring up and be aware of as we start to move things forward. So not quite a question, more of a follow-up. No other council member questions at this time. We'll open it up for public comment on this presentation. Any public comment specifically on this presentation? Going once, going twice, seeing none. We will move on to 5.4, Employee Incentive Awards. Town Manager Callaway.
Great, thank you. And I'm hoping there's a lot of people watching at home hear all the great work we're doing, and also how many employees we have that have been working for the town for many years. So we do our annual service awards in November. So a lot of them are in the room tonight, so we can congratulate them while they're here. But for 5 years of service with the town, we have Officer Pat Schaefer, Connie Knuckles, Angela Martin, Kimberly Bullock, and Josh Blazer. For 10 years of service, Nicole Casey, Yumi Don, Allison Herzog, Robert Rabber, and Andrew Morris. Congratulations. For 15 years of service with the town, Nick Ramirez and Bonnie Thompson Harden. 20 years, David Scott. For 25 years, Dan Wilkins and Mike Vaughn. Congratulations, Dan. And then, believe it or not, we have an employee that has been with the town since incorporation for 30 years, and is one of our mechanics, Terry Tachenko. So congratulations to Terry. In the hiring environment that we've been in and the staffing environment we've been in, to have employees spending 5, 10, 30 years with an organization, that's really something to celebrate and be proud of. So we appreciate all of their work. Then for our incentive awards, we have a number of them tonight, but we have some really cool ones that I think you'll be excited about. Our first is Brett Clark. Brett is one of our newest employees in the IT division. Hasn't even been with us for a year yet, and he's already getting an incentive award. So setting the standard pretty high going forward for himself. But Brett was nominated for commitment and excellence. And we had a town employee who had a temporary accommodation need for an injury where they could not type on a keyboard for more than 4 hours a day. And so we were looking into programs to help them measure the amount of time they were typing in order to meet their accommodation. And that's actually harder than one would think to find a program like that. So Brett had heard about this request and decided that it would be really fun to code something himself at night. So he went home and coded a program. He came back, he worked with Chris to make sure it was secure for our network. They installed it, and now we have a program that's allowing us to keep this employee working and accommodating their needs in a very creative way. So great job to Brett, and for this self-initiative and creative thinking. So we're excited about that. And then next, we're basically want to recognize all of our public works staff out at the courtyard. Number of different teams out there for the amount of work they do, a lot of which you heard about in our update tonight on the local roads safety plan. But first, our striping crew, Octavio Martinez, Brad Kohler, Brad Relay, David Dombrowski, Chad Nelson, Daryl Hogan, and Grant Gray, for teamwork, accountability, commitment, and excellence. So if you like any of the work that you saw on the Legacy Trail for centerline striping, Donner Lake fish sculpture install, assistance with that, West River Street and Deerfield Drive striping, Church Street bike lane striping. This is the team that made all of that happen. And in some cases with less than 24-hour notice. So there was a ribbon cutting out at Church Street, and there was some repairs that happened, and we needed to have that striped before you all showed up for that ribbon cutting. And Chad got right out there with his team and made that happen. They went above and beyond to help with the Donner Lake fish sculpture install, the River Street street striping, and then of course the Legacy Trail. So thank you to the team to make that happen. Our Legacy Trail abutment factoring team, Jesse Martinez, Holden Reed, and Steve Seitz. Sorry about that. I knew I pronounced at least one wrong completely. Teamwork, commitment, and excellence. So during the construction, a number of very large boulders were encountered in the way of the future Legacy Trail, Southbridge abutment, which required a minor redesign. So the contractors got ahead of themselves on the construction, and so we had to call our team out, and they used the Vector truck to expose the rocks so that we could have a geotechnical engineer evaluate the rock and the soil conditions for the redesign. So on a moment's notice, this team arrived. They cleaned up around the rebar. They improved the contractor's chances on completing the abutment this construction season, showing off their commitment to teamwork and excellence. Then for the Brockway Road wall art installation, Jack Rear and Tom Pratt, that path installation would not have been completed without Tom and Jack out there working hand in hand with our artists on several occasions to map it out and get it installed really safely. And if you see any of the video footage that we had of that install, they were laughing, they were having a great time, and really looked like they were enjoying themselves. So we love their positive attitude and their can-do commitment to getting the job done. For Nick Heil, Josh Balzer, and Abel Iceless, they facilitated the new handrail at the Trout Creek Trailhead that Becky showed you a picture of in the update. And they went out there. Josh went out separately, and Abel were assisting Nick with the replacement. They cut it, they notched it, they drilled it, they welded it, they did all of it, all on their own in-house, and really showed off all of their talents. So it's 19,000 feet of cable. They dug and poured 155 footings, and they used 387 bags of concrete. A lot of hard work for those three gentlemen, and we appreciate that. And then for teamwork, commitment, and excellence, we have Tammy Fittement. Tammy is one of our CSOs, and we have been a little bit understaffed in our CSO department due to some vacancies and some people out on personal leave, and Tammy has stepped in and covered that for us, all with a really positive attitude. She's filled in for parking, animal control services, really anything that we've needed her to do while we had those vacancies. The good news is we are back up to staff. Fully staffed now in CSOs, so Tammy can take a little bit of break, but we appreciate all of her hard work and her positive attitude while doing that. And then our last award for tonight, this is something we don't get to do. I've actually never done it, so this is really interesting. Officer Jason Canham, he received a life-saving award due to the following actions. On May 18th, Officer Canham was off duty in his personal vehicle on his way to work. And during his commute, he encountered a single vehicle collision that had just occurred. A white Jeep Cherokee had cantilevered off the highway and into a ditch, and the collision resulted in the vehicle being severely disabled and on fire. Officer Canham approached the vehicle immediately, recognized the danger. He stopped and he assisted. He actually pulled both of the occupants out of the vehicle. One he was able to wake up and help get out, and the other occupant he had to actually pull out of the vehicle. It was a male and female occupants, and he did this without hesitation. He went above and beyond and didn't even think about his own safety at the moment and just tried to get the two occupants out. That is something we don't get to recognize our employees for very often, thankfully, but amazing work from our officers and off-duty, starting his shift early, unbeknownst to him. So congratulations to Officer Callum and his dedication. That's all I have tonight with the service awards.
Do you want to go ahead and do town manager report too, 5.5, and then we can come back? Any comments or questions?
I will, thank you. We just have a couple tonight. This is our last week for green waste pickup, so if you have any, get that out before the snow starts to fall. And then we have launched a community survey for future input on art. The Art Commission is looking for some feedback on where their next art project should be and maybe some general topics for what that art project should be. We want to do more litter art, animals, tribal art. So take that survey. You can find it on our website or Town of Truckee website or on our social media accounts. There's a link to that. So we'd love to have your feedback. And then lastly, we hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. As we move into the holiday season, we will be closed the week of December 25th. So I just want to start prepping people for that now. If you have work to do and need assistance from the town at a front counter, do that before the Christmas holiday. We will have staff working, but we won't have phones or front counter service here at Town Hall.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions on Jen's 2 items? Councilmember Zabriskie?
Not sure how to tie this in with Jen's comments. I just wanted to say I've received a lot of compliments from people about the repaving of the trails and the potholes over the last couple of months. Just a lot of unsolicited compliments. So that's another reason it's really great to be sitting up here. It's always wonderful to get compliments about what someone else does. So thank you, staff.
Over here? No? Councilmember Glovestad?
I just want to say what a pleasure it is to hear these awards. So thank you for taking the time to do that. And what an extraordinary group of people we have included in this town hall and beyond. So thank you.
I second that. Thank you very much. With that, we will open it up to public comment on those last 2 presentations. Would anyone like to make a public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. And we will move on to our consent calendar. We have 12 items. I will read through them. Minutes from the November 14th, 2023 closed session and regular meeting. 6.2, short-term rental ordinance cleanup adoption. 6.3, accept the quarter ended September 30th, 2023 treasurer's report. Item 6.4, automated license plate reading flock safety services contract. 6.5, resolution authorizing applications for Cal Recycle individual grants. 6.6, Soaring Ranch Infrastructure Community Facilities District acquisition agreement. 6.7, authorize the settlement and payment release of damage claim. 6.8, request the addition of a senior planner position. 6.9, acceptance of the quarterly financial report for a quarter ended September 30th, 2023. 6.10, contract amendment with Eastern Sierra Engineering for Mobility Hub Phase 1. 6.11, 2023 Truckee Depot Curb and Gutter Replacement Project, notice of completion and increase in authorized contract amount. And 6.12, new and updated accessory dwelling unit incentive program. Would any council member like to pull an item? Seeing none. Any staff member like to pull an item?
No, Mayor. Thank you.
And would any member of the public like to pull any of those items? Seeing none, we'll bring it back up here. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I move we approve the consent items.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. All right, with that, Aaron, we're happy to have you back. Sorry to make you wait last time. First item this evening, 7.1, Truckee Weatherization Program.
And while she's moving up, we are not having a meeting on 12/26 since town offices will be closed.
That is correct.
Thank you. Just confirming.
All right, good evening, Council. I am here to present a proposed low-income weatherization program here in Truckee. So I'll start with some brief background on the town's support of weatherization programs. Since 2022, the town has funded matching rebates for weatherization measures with the Truckee Donner Public Utility District. to expand eligibility for these rebates to households with any heating fuel source. Earlier this year, TDPUD increased their weatherization rebate amounts, and staff returned to council in April for approval to match those higher rebates. At this time, staff highlighted key program barriers, particularly for lower income households, and recommended development of a turnkey, no-cost weatherization program. While staff were developing a program proposal, we became aware of a grant opportunity and submitted an application for a countywide weatherization program in partnership with Nevada County, Nevada City, and Grass Valley. Unfortunately, the project was not selected for funding, although the reviewers did say the program had merit, but unfortunately we were not in a geographic priority area. As we noted in June, if we did not receive the grant, we plan to return to council with a funding request to implement a similar program here in Truckee. So here we are. Weatherization is focused on improving the energy efficiency of buildings and making them more resilient to local weather conditions and climate impacts. This includes measures such as sealing the building envelope and air ducts to reduce leaks, improving insulation of both the building and heating and cooling equipment, and replacing low-performance doors and windows. Weatherization is an urgent need here in Truckee due to our cold winters, and climate impacts such as more severe winter storms and smoke from wildfires also increase the need for home sealing measures. Another reason weatherization is a high priority is high energy bills. Low-income households in Truckee have an energy burden, which is the percentage of total household income spent on energy bills that's considered very high by DOE standards. Town-wide, households at or below 80% of area median income have an average energy burden of 8%, and our lowest income households have an average energy burden of 27%, meaning they spend more than a quarter of their total household income just paying their energy bills. High energy use also creates greenhouse gas emissions. In fact, 42% of Truckee's greenhouse gas emissions are just from residential energy use, representing the largest share of our community-wide emissions. Most homes in Truckee use natural gas or propane as their primary heating fuel, representing an opportunity to directly reduce fossil fuel use through improved energy efficiency. Properly implemented weatherization measures can reduce total building energy use by 10 to 20%. Weatherization and other efficiency measures are also a necessary first step for more comprehensive building decarbonization, as it's important to make the building as efficient as possible before upgrading or switching out equipment. So there are 3 main existing weatherization assistance programs currently available to some or all Truckee residents, depending on their income level and primary heating fuel type. The first are the Energy Savings Assistance Programs operated by the investor-owned utilities. These are turnkey, no-cost weatherization programs available to households whose primary heating fuel is either a natural gas from Southwest Gas or electricity supplied by Liberty Utilities. The household income qualification is up to 250% of the federal poverty level, and households participating in many other income-qualified assistance programs such as SNAP, WIC, Medi-Cal, or CalWORKs are also automatically eligible. Similarly, the Federal Weatherization Assistance Program is a no-cost program, but with a lower income threshold of 200% of the federal poverty level. However, it is available to homes with any heating fuel type. And as I mentioned before, the TDPUD weatherization rebates are available to homes of any income level, and thanks to the town's matching funds, homes with any heating fuel type. However, these rebates only cover a portion of the total project cost. Participation in all 3 of these programs has been very low in Truckee. Each of these programs have different eligibility criteria and different covered measures, which has really complicated program outreach and enrollment. So over the past several months, town staff have met with the program operators of each of these programs, as well as local contractors, to discuss barriers to effective program implementation and how the town could best facilitate greater implementation of weatherization measures here in Truckee. Our goal is not to duplicate these programs, but figure out how we can best fill in the gaps and leverage these programs to the fullest extent to increase participation. The result of all that research is the proposed Truckee Weatherization Program. This would be a no-cost turnkey program that would be available to households making up to 80% of area median income, regardless of their heating fuel type. Income qualified renters who directly pay their utility bills would also be eligible as long as they have the property owner's approval. Mobile homes would be eligible under this proposed program as well, and are eligible for most of the existing weatherization programs too. This program would directly benefit participating households by lowering their energy bills and improving the comfort and health of their homes. This program would also increase the resilience of our residential buildings to extreme temperatures and other expected climate impacts. Reducing energy use will also reduce greenhouse gas emissions, primarily from direct fossil fuel combustion of natural gas and propane heating fuels. The proposed Truckee weatherization program is designed to existing program barriers in 4 ways. First, to create a centralized program that will allow for more effective outreach and streamlined program intake. This is expected to increase participation in existing weatherization programs for already eligible households. Second, provide supplemental funding for critical repairs to enable participation in the existing programs. Lack of sufficient funding for these repairs was cited by the Federal Weatherization Assistance Program operator as their primary barrier to greater program participation. Third, this proposed program would standardize the program criteria across all heating fuel types to facilitate simplified universal program messaging to residents. And fourth, it would increase that eligibility, income eligibility to 80% AMI. To fund this proposed program, we are requesting $310,000 in funds from the GHG emissions reduction CIP through December 2025. This funding would come from the $200,000 included in the CIP each year to fund home energy retrofits. And we anticipate that approximately 2/3 of this funding would be for home upgrades and repairs, with a remainder for program administration. We estimate that this funding will facilitate direct weatherization upgrades for approximately 40 homes, and the outreach and assistance provided by the program administrator is also anticipated to substantially increase participation in existing weatherization programs for already eligible households. If approved, the next step would be to issue an RFP for the program administrator. We would then return to council for approval of that contract. The goal would be to have the program administrator in place by end of February 2024 so that the program could be active by the start of next year's construction season. And once the program administrator is in place, the town would work with them to jointly develop the program criteria, including eligible measures, not to exceed costs, and the contractor selection guidelines. This process will also involve input from our key community stakeholders, such as the Contractors Association of Truckee Tahoe. In addition, Keep Truckee Green staff have begun work on our existing building decarbonization roadmap, which is one of our climate action plan element items. While we have identified weatherization as an urgent, unmet need for the most vulnerable segments of our community, it is only one small piece of the puzzle when it comes to decarbonization of our existing building stock. So this roadmap will assess potential policies and programs to decarbonize our existing residential and commercial buildings in Truckee. And development of the roadmap will help ensure that the town's resources are used effectively and equitably to support our adopted GHG reduction goals. And with that, that brings us to our recommended action, which is to authorize use of up to $310,000 in funds from CIP C1510 through December 31st, 2025 to fund a low-income weatherization pilot program in Truckee. And I'm happy to take any questions you have.
Thank you very much, Erin. All right, with that, we'll start with questions. Councilmember Klovstad, we'll go this way first.
Thank you so much, Erin. Is there an opportunity to reapply for the countywide envisioned program? Are there upcoming other grant opportunities potentially?
We will certainly keep an eye out. This particular program was the EECBG competitive program. We don't qualify for the block grants and the direct allocation, and neither did any of the other Nevada County jurisdictions. So unfortunately, there was a very small amount of funds allocated to that program, and there were just too many applications received. So there will not be another opportunity for that program, but we'll certainly as we always do, keep our eye out for any other funding opportunities that could support a broader program.
Especially since it has been deemed of having merit, right?
Exactly.
Let's leverage that. Why do you have this program proposed to go only through December of 2025?
Sure. So this is really a pilot program. We have identified this as like an urgent need, and that examine the barriers to the existing programs to try to unravel why Truckee has such low participation when some of our surrounding jurisdictions do not. We are developing that existing building decarbonization roadmap, which is going to be a much sort of higher level look at the policies and programs. And so we may, as part of that process, determine that this, and based on the success of this pilot program, determine that this is a program that's worth continuing, or we may identify a different type of program or another strategy that we would recommend after 2025.
And so that building decarbonization plan, that's going to be finalized sometime in the next, how long?
We do anticipate that will be complete by the end of this fiscal year. We are starting the first stage of that, which is just an assessment of our existing building stock. And then after that's complete, we will start looking at which policies and programs are the best fit for addressing our buildings and our sources of emissions.
So I had a couple of conversations with Jen today about where I thought the bottleneck was going to be with this program, being that I don't think we're going to have a shortage of people interested, and I don't think we're going to have a shortage of funding, because I think we're very supportive of this. But I'm concerned about finding licensed and available contractors that are interested in these very small jobs, is what they end up being. Can you explain to me the way that you envision this RFP and how this will work? That was all new to me. I did not understand that initially.
Sure. So the way that both the Federal Weatherization Assistance Program and the Utility ESA programs, both of which the ESA programs are run by the same program administrator locally. The program administrator is the one that contracts with the contractors to implement these programs. They tend to bring on contractors for the program, not for individual upgrade projects. And so because they're packaging together a large number of these smaller upgrade projects, that does help make it more attractive to contractors to participate. And so we would be, once the program administrator is brought on board, our proposal is to work with them and with CAT and other stakeholders to figure out if that's the best approach for this program, if a slightly different contracting model makes the most sense here, because we do recognize that, we want this to benefit our local workforce as much as possible, but we do recognize that there are a lot of constraints, and that doing this on a project-by-project basis may not serve either the program or the local workforce. So we want to kind of find out what the best way forward is for everyone.
I'm very excited to test that approach. So please provide us updates and feedback on that as appropriate, because I think that would be a really unique way to resolve where I was concerned the bottleneck was going to be. Thank you for that.
Vice Mayor Pallavi?
Yeah, I guess I was more concerned. I think I had two concerns on the bottleneck, and one was the second thing you mentioned, which is it envisioned that the program administrator is going to be soliciting households, and the reason why I'm asking about that part of the process is if our program is aimed at 80% or below of AMI, I mean, a lot of those people are either unfamiliar or don't know. I mean, it seems like it's more of a hard to reach demographic. So I was actually concerned as well as to how we were going to find those people to come into the program. Can you explain that?
Sure. So we've had a few conversations with the program administrators of these other programs on how they do that outreach. The utilities do know, for the customers that have signed on to the CARE rates, the lower income rates, they already are income qualified. That provides a direct line for outreach for this program in cooperation with utilities. We've also talked with Sierra Community House. They already help residents as part of their general services kind of navigate assistance programs that they may be eligible for. And so when we were proposing the countywide program, Sarah Community House was going to be a big partner for us locally in helping onboard residents and reach out to those communities. I anticipate we would also probably do some direct outreach at mobile home parks where there's going to be larger concentrations of eligible residents, work with those property managers, and just work with a lot of our community partners to figure out the best ways to reach these populations. We've also had some conversations with the county related to our foodware ordinance about opportunities for directly messaging residents that are participating in some of the income qualified assistance programs. And so that could provide another way to reach some of our lower income households.
Interesting. It'll be interesting to see how that rolls out. My only other question is a little bit touching on this program, but also touching on all of the programs that you sort of mentioned and the staff report highlighted in the beginning. And that is, it doesn't seem like there's much of a connection, regardless of the fact that maybe there aren't a ton of applicants going through a building permit process for whatever purposes, remodels, windows, et cetera. Is there a connection where the building department is saying, hey, you're making these improvements, here are some other programs that are out there? And in my experience, the answer would be no, but I'm wondering if maybe that was just my personal experience versus a broader opportunity that maybe we're just missing.
Yeah, that is something I'd have to look into and talk about with buildings and see what those opportunities are, but we can certainly.
I will say we're missing that. We could definitely do a better job. Yeah,
right?
completely.
100%?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
I
Just being
think
clear.
one of the challenges with this is we can certainly look at how to do a better job, but when they're income qualified, it's a little bit more sensitive to make an assumption about an application. We do a pretty good job, I think, with the ADU program, because Jamie is able to say, hey, you want to do an ADU, talk to Lynn and see if you qualify for the grant program. There's not necessarily that income restriction, but
I would just
it's a good
recommend
comment.
it's as easy as a one pager. If you're getting a window permit, hey, here's a one pager. We don't know if you qualify. We don't care if you qualify. Here's some things to go look at, right? Or whatever type of permit specifically is appealing to that.
I think there's opportunity to use our code compliance officers also, because they are out and about in the community quite a bit,
Yeah,
and they kind of know demographic and sort of have that level of outreach already where people are pretty receptive. So that's another opportunity.
Yeah, and I'm not talking from a screening perspective. Like, no, when you submit a building permit, we're not asking you your income. We're just saying, hey, if you're doing this, you might also qualify for that. Go check it out if you want our help. We're here to help. That very much dawned on me during this staff report. So thank you.
Great idea.
Councilmember Zabriskie, questions?
Is the AMI determined by looking at the total household income and the total number of occupants? Okay.
Yeah, so the AMI does depend on the number of the household size.
Okay. And then if it's a rental, you'll look at the income of the actual occupants and you don't look at the income of the landlord.
So the way the existing programs are structured and the way we would propose to structure ours is that it's the applicant who income qualifies, and that applicant has to be the one, it has to be either the property owner or if it's a renter would need to be the one paying the utility bill, because the idea is that the income qualified party is the one that benefits from the cost savings generally. If the property owner is renting it out and is also income qualified, that's probably okay regardless. But yes.
Okay, so if a renter wants to recover their portion of the improvement with a rent deduction, that's not something we're going to look at.
I mean, we can, structure the program. We can structure the program however we want. That's, certainly up to us. I think the idea is really that the benefit is through those energy bill reductions, through those ongoing cost savings. If you want to propose that we look into some kind of other recovery mechanism when we're working with the program administrator, we certainly can.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm not. I'm just want to make sure we're aware that in many instances, a renter is going to feel that the landlord's going to benefit, get the long-term benefit of the improvement. The renter might be there on a month-to-month, and so will want to be reimbursed by the landlord, and we're just going to leave that up to the renter is what I'm assuming so far.
I think, the benefit of the landlord getting something out of that deal is it does provide them an incentive to allow allow participation in the program. And so it is in those scenarios win-win where the resident or the renter gets the cost savings from the reduced energy costs, and then the landlord gets improvement value to their property.
Okay. How did you arrive at this program being able to provide upgrades for at least 40 homes?
So we looked at the average costs, implementation costs in the existing programs, and just made a very high-level calculation, assuming a split of, fully funded upgrades and then some just supplemental repair costs to facilitate participation in the existing programs. Depending on what mix of those we get, it's going to, and we may have a lot of homes that only need a few upgrades. We may have homes where they're all kind of maxing out, but we looked at average costs from the existing programs and don't have it nearby, and we don't have a reason to think that our costs would be substantially different.
Okay, I thought I heard you say that other programs nearby or ones you looked at have been relatively successful. What do we attribute their success to?
Sure. So in the PG&E territory in Nevada County, they've completed about 5,000 upgrades, which is roughly half of their estimated eligible households. I think there they benefit from having one utility, and it's a larger utility that have more resources to do outreach, and it can streamline their messaging because they're the only game in town really when it comes to both electricity and gas. And so you're very likely to have one of those two as your heating fuel. There's also ESA programs have been more successful in South Lake Tahoe. And when we talked with the program administrators, part of what we heard was that Truckee being a little bit more isolated, the program administrators work regionally. Most are based out of the Sacramento metro area. And so the number of interested projects that they would need to justify the cost of coming up the hill, without sort of a supplemental program funding like we're proposing here, it just didn't pencil out. And so they end up doing most of their upgrades closer to their home base. And in South Lake, I think they just have, it's a larger area and they're a little closer to other areas.
Okay. And did you say that you expect to have an administrator in place by the end of February?
That would be our goal.
And,
yes.
And then how soon after that would this program actually open for business?
It'll depend a little bit on the process of determining those program criteria, and in collaboration with CAT and our Sierra Community House and our other local community stakeholders. Our goal would be to have it up and running by the summer for sure.
Okay. And so all of that money that's been allocated to this fiscal year would roll over into the next?
It's from the CIP, so yes, it would roll over. But
Okay. Thank you, Erin. Those are all my questions.
Councilmember Henderson?
Thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. I know that in the staff report, you all are proposing focusing on residents at or below 80% AMI. Can you just remind me approximately what number of housing units in Truckee that we have that we sort of estimate would fall at or below 80%?
Yeah, that's actually a surprisingly complicated question to answer because households and housing units don't line up perfectly. Yeah. But we did, so the Mountain Housing Council needs assessment estimates about 34% of workforce households are under 80% AMI. And that's households, that's not necessarily housing units. And that doesn't necessarily include households where no members are currently employed because they were focusing on workforce housing. So right now, that's the best estimate we have. I don't have that in terms of numbers right now, just a percent.
That's okay. The percent,
Yes.
it's like I said, it's an estimate, it's an approximate number.
Just to follow up, I had looked into that, and what I saw was 1,000 households under 80% within Truckee from the Mountain Housing Council report on workers looking for. Yeah.
And how would this potentially integrate with the CTA building decarb work? I guess if at all, because they're also proposing a one-stop concierge type service, both for residential and business building decarb.
Sure. So the CTA's program doesn't include any financial incentives or direct implementation. And so I think it's a great resource to help refer potentially eligible residents into our program and to support them in finding additional incentives they may qualify for. But that is really designed to provide the kind of support you don't get when you have a turnkey program. And so I think, for the lower income households, especially who can't front the money and then get a rebate, and who, can't necessarily go find contractors to implement each of these measures, this just goes much farther than that. But we do anticipate it will help refer
Kind of be a
potential.
funnel a bit?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. And then for the home assessments, the PUD offers home assessments already. So will this program leverage that offering and coordinate with it? Or are we proposing the program administrator replicate an assessor offering as well?
So our goal would definitely not be to replicate existing programs and to leverage them as much as we can. Certainly, I don't know if those home assessments are currently available. I know if they're not, they should be soon. We've been kind of waiting to see when that will be launched. I think, we will work with the PUD and all of our utilities to figure out the best way to integrate our program with their existing offerings. We may need to do some additional home assessments beyond the PUD's program. Just if they're focused very much on energy efficiency, we may need to do some supplemental analysis for those critical repairs. So we'll see. Hopefully it provides us most of what we need.
Right, just so we're being efficient and not
Absolutely.
duplicating. And do you anticipate assessor capacity to be adequate, or do we anticipate that to be a barrier? I know we talked about contractors more doing the jobs, but what about on the assessor side?
So the way, from talking with the program administrators, they tend to, onboard potentially interested homes and try to bundle them so they have, 20 or so, and then bring an assessor out to do all of those in a week or in a few days. And so that helps really reduce the time demand. And I think we'd probably be pursuing a similar model, and that would help address it. It's not a full energy audit, and so it doesn't take the same level of expertise as like a full ASHRAE audit. So I think we should be okay with that capacity.
And then because LIHEAP and WAP do cover some health and safety measures, we'll be leveraging that for anyone who comes to the program who actually qualifies, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay.
And then working with those programs on some kind of agreement, if we to potentially provide some supplemental funding that then will funnel that household with that supplemental funding, then they can participate in those programs as well.
Okay. And the consultant selected after we issue the RFP is going to advise on all of those health and safety measures that would qualify, right? So they're like knob and tube wiring and asbestos and safety testing for heating systems, slip and fall hazards, mold, pest, all of those things.
Right. We would be relying on their expertise to help us develop that list of eligible measures, develop the not to exceed costs per measure, per home, all of those details. Yes.
Okay. On the contractor models, I guess this one might be, maybe that's more of a deliberation. I'll save that one. I do have a question related to, so if customers, there are some programs sponsored by utilities that provide the supplemental like health and safety measure funding in particular. And some models work such that customers who aren't necessarily income eligible but live in like a small, 2 to 5 unit building, whatever that is, where more than 50% of the units are income eligible, can also receive that weatherization and health and safety measures. it's sort of like a 50% rule. Are we going to apply something similar to capture those types of smaller multifamily properties? Would that come out of, talking with the consultant?
So those details are part of what we would determine in talking with the program administrator. But I think we certainly would want to include the type of program for especially smaller multifamily properties where the eligible measures are going to be very similar. There's not substantial difference between a duplex and a single family home when it comes to those eligible measures and costs. In those cases, it tends to be the property owner that applies for the project for the whole building. And so, yes, we would work with the program administrator to figure out what that threshold is of what percentage of residents would need to income qualify. But I think that's really the only thing that makes sense for those multifamily properties.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then I know you mentioned participation goals, and I think those goals make a lot of sense. The DOE Office of EERE actually has some estimates on average weatherization costs per unit. They estimate about $4,700. That was in 2022, but and that included some of those health and safety life type measures. So we have participation goals. Do we have energy savings goals and sort of participation by the end of 2025 or over what time frame? What does that look like?
So that 10 to 20% reduction is a number we got from our local program administrators. I think the overall, we would talk with the program administrator about what a reasonable goal for that is. We certainly want to track the savings, and they do, when they provide a scope of those upgrades for each home, they do an estimate of what the energy savings will be. I don't know our ability to actually measure those over time and whether normalize that gets a little more complicated, but we can certainly get that upfront estimate. It will depend on what eligible measures are going to be implemented for each home, because some, if it's just weather stripping versus the homes that have really very little insulation to start with, and were summer cabins originally, not intended for winter use, they're going to see substantially higher savings. But that 10 to 20% was the average they were seeing.
Okay, last question. Data collection is going to be really critical to this. So I assume that the PA will also be responsible for sort of managing the data collection systems and processes.
Yes, that would be part of their scope, is to collect that information, including those estimated energy savings, cost savings, and GHG reductions, and then kind of report that out for the program to us.
And just to put a little detail on it. So and I know this will be part of the RFP probably, but things like building information and heating system information. Are we doing aerators and shower heads? If so, we need GPM and location and number and system type, equipment age, visual inspection of equipment, and also all of those participation metrics like home ownership and demographics.
Absolutely. And, our hope is that we can, as you just described, collect a lot of information about the existing conditions in our building stock, and that will give us some insight into what the challenges may be when we look at more comprehensive building decarbonization. What is the status in a lot of these homes? What kinds of costs are we seeing? What kinds of wiring do they have? What kind of heating systems do they have? We don't have very good data on that, and so that has been a challenge. So we would definitely want to leverage that as much as possible.
So I know I said it was the last question, but I promise this is the last one. It just brings up another question for me, because a lot of this the administrative burden will really lie with the assessors who are going into the homes. And maybe this is just to feed into the RFP or something, but consideration of a mobile application to reduce that administrative burden for assessors. We might want to think about that.
Absolutely.
Maybe that's more of a comment, not a question. I apologize.
Yeah, we will certainly make a note of that. I don't know what they use in the existing programs, but if they're not currently utilizing that kind of technology, it's certainly something we'd want to look into.
Thank you very much. I do not have any further questions. With that, we'll open it up to public comment. Any member of the public like to make a comment on this item? Seeing none, we will close public comment. Bring it back up here. Councilmember Klofstad.
Well, Erin, thank you so much. I'm very enthusiastic and excited about this program. Something that we really needed, and that it's truly one of those triple bottom line programs, right? It's having an environmental impact, an economic impact, and a social impact, and all benefits. And it's a really much needed, overdue gap filler, right? That we've talked about for quite some time. I talked earlier about my concerns for bottlenecks. I think some of my fellow council members have identified a few other concerns. I'm looking forward to the RFP process and the agreement process to see how many of those concerns we can preempt. Obviously, not all of them, but hopefully quite a few. I did have a conversation with Advento today, and he's very enthusiastic about this program too, and wants to work collaboratively with the town in trying to make sure that we have adequate contractor interest. And to that end, for any contractor out there that's listening, or friends of a contractor or family of a contractor, I just really want to plug the benefits of this work a little bit. You know, this is stable, long-term work that any company can actually build a whole division around, because it's going to be here for a very long time. We're going to do this 80% AMI, but we've got our whole building decarbonization program ahead of us. It's all related. This in particular is really great work because you don't have to chase down the money. You know, the grant is going to be there. You're not having to invoice people and re-invoice them and tell them that they're overdue, and that, you know, the money is going to be there. It was the same thing with the school district work. We pay our bills, right? It's a steady stream of work that can sustain local contractors through other peaks and wanes that our market constantly experiences. So I really think there's a benefit there, and this is going to be a long horizon and growing market. So just some plugs out there. Hopefully we have a lot of interest in it. I also kind of see this as a drop in the bucket, but knowing that we have our building decarbonization program ahead of us, I'm excited about that. And in particular because this is so important, because yes, I'm very excited about the greenhouse gas reductions, but I'm even more excited about reducing this energy burden on our local residents, and many of them critical parts of our workforce. I would like to look at increasing that AMI over the years of the program as we fill or complete many of that 80% and below AMI. So something that I think we could put in the bike rack as a future discussion for how we would want to either talk about adding funding to this program or expanding this program in the future. I think this program is great the way it is right now, but I just want to put a pin in that and maybe put it in the bike rack of how are we going to look at ways to expand and hopefully leverage the successes of this program. So that's where I am with it.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Pallavi.
Nothing more to add.
Councilmember Zabriskie.
I agree with Councilmember Klogstad on increasing the AMI over the years. I see that as I don't want to see the AMI stand in the way of our reducing the greenhouse gases. And I guess I'm thinking as this program starts to yield benefits and gets refined to be more efficient, I'm thinking in terms of our wanting to shift to the most energy inefficient homes, regardless of income, at least trying to focus on those and finding out why anyone would want to allow them to be generating so many emissions, and then providing the subsidies where that's the reason that prevents them from making the improvements. In many ways, this is a housing assistance program. I agree on the triple bottom line, environment, economic, and social. For a lot of people, this will be a habitability issue. by securing their home and making it warmer and safer. So it's housing assistance as well. We're getting 42% greenhouse gas emissions from residential housing. This is where we need to focus our efforts to do the reductions, and it's great to see staff is coming up with this. I'm looking forward to this kicking off and being implemented. I guess the last thing I want to say, I suspect most of the under 80% AMI homes are going to be rentals, and I hope you are probing other programs to find out how they address this conflict between the landlord's duty to provide habitable housing and our interest in subsidizing greenhouse gas emission reductions and energy efficiency.
Thank you, Councilmember Zabriskie. Councilmember Henderson?
Well, I enthusiastically support this. I'm really excited for us to be able to pilot this, and I have just a few comments if they're helpful with the RFP or anything like that. So, I absolutely agree with the health and safety work as a huge barrier. It's so critical to address. This is work that I've done in my professional career, and it is absolutely heartbreaking when people are disqualified from participating in weatherization work, and that's work that can decrease their energy burden. It can provide greater comfort, better indoor air quality, just because there are incentives to address those health and safety issues. So I think this is a great challenge that we are taking on. There are ways of addressing the split incentive challenge, which Councilmember Zabriskie has discussed when you have, typically landlords and renters with different interests, potentially different benefits, one person paying, another person getting the benefits out of that. I would just say that it is very much worthy of investigation as part of our program. And if we're including renters, not revelatory here, but it's going to be really important to directly engage with the landlords to get their buy-in as an important stakeholder. A barrier for contractors in these types of programs is getting paid promptly for jobs done, as I'm sure that you know, and we really don't want payment delays. So we'll just have to make sure we're working with the program administrator to really define targeted time for payment of jobs, payment processes. It's really critical for contractor participation, satisfaction, and retention in a program like this. On contractor models, I'll just say also, as you know, there are so many ways that these can be structured. And after an assessor goes in, identifies different opportunities, for weatherization, upgrading heating systems, things like that. There are programs that the contractors submit those customer-specific bids, right, to the program administrator, typically for bigger measures like a heating system replacement. There are programs where the weatherization contractors, for example, agree annually or biannually with the program on fixed prices for really common measures, your insulation, your air sealing, things like that. And then just my last comment is on the marketing side, because we have, sort of administration marketing budget in this. Just as we roll this out, I think the marketing component will really benefit from a focused look at those marketing expenditures, just so we know the value associated with each of those and where we're really getting our participation from. But I am very, very excited for this. Those are just a few thoughts for consideration.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your expertise. I don't feel I have anything additional to add. You have all said it very well. So with that, I'm wholeheartedly supportive of this. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I would just like to check in with my fellow council members about that bike rack of revisiting this.
I was thinking that might come up in our bike rack discussion.
Oh, yes.
In 2 items.
There we go. We could talk about it then. And with that, I'll recommend that we authorize use of up to $310,000 in funds from CIP C-1510 through December 31st, 2025 to fund a low-income weatherization pilot program in Truckee.
I enthusiastically second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Aaron. All right, I am going to suggest we take a real quick break, and then we're going to go to item 7.3. We're going to take items out of order since Yumi so patiently waited through our last meeting. But it being 7:15 and I've drinking like 8 gallons of water. If everyone's up for it, 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and excited to hear Yumi. 7.3. We are again taking item 7.3 before item 7.2. Take it away.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for having me present. I'm very excited to do this item since we didn't do it last time. This is the same item we do every year. It's the Affordable Housing in lieu fee update and Workforce Housing Ordinance review, as you are all very familiar. Just to give you a quick refresher on the in lieu fee, our town development code requires affordable housing for all residential projects. 15% of the units of a residential project are required to be deed restricted to affordable housing. Non-residential projects that generate more than 7 employees are also required to provide affordable housing. Fee payment in lieu of construction of these affordable housing units is allowed for small projects, so residential projects with 6 parcels or fewer, 10,000 square feet of commercial or less, 20,000 square foot of industrial or less. And that's at the developer's choice. They can decide to just do the payment of the in lieu fee. For larger projects that are larger than the small projects that I've identified here, it's at the town's discretion. The review authority can determine if a payment of an in lieu fee for the whole amount is appropriate or not. When there is a fraction of a housing unit that's required for as part of the project, the developer can also choose to pay the in lieu fee. So that's at their discretion as well. But if there is a whole unit that's required, then it is at the town's discretion to either require the in lieu fee or to require construction of the unit. So in 2017, the Town Council adopted a streamlined update process for the in lieu fee based on a baseline created by Bay Area Economics. Each year, we update the last year's calculation by applying 3 factors. We look at the home values using the Tahoe Sierra Board of Realtors information for single-family homes in Truckee. We determine the changes in construction costs based off of the engineering news record, and we adjust based on changes to Nevada County income limits. In the past couple of years, Council directed staff to defer the larger discussion on housing policies to after the 2040 general plan process, which we've completed in May, but also as part of the housing element update process, which is anticipated in a couple of years. So to give you a look at where we are today in 2023 for those 3 factors, single-family median home prices have decreased about 10% in the last year. The construction costs within Truckee have increased about 2.5%, and then the Nevada County income limits has actually increased 14%. So with all of those factors combined, the affordable housing in lieu fee that came out of the 2017 streamlined calculation process came to $115,517, and that's actually a 14% reduction from the previous year, which was $134,000 approximately. Just for your reference, in the past year, the town collected $37,000 for one project, which is the Martis Outlook project, which is an existing building, but they were putting in a residential unit. And then other approved projects that are required to provide workforce housing or in lieu fees, but haven't yet to do it. It's Crestwood Construction, Zurich Place Offices, which is in Tahoe-Donner, and then Ski Slope Townhomes. We did receive one public comment from MAP requesting maintaining the current fee of $134,000 rather than decreasing it by 14%. And as with all these processes, the council can decide whether a more robust process should be done, if we should go back and do another study of the calculation process, but that should be probably conducted in your next session or your next item with the work plan. Additionally, as part of this annual review, we look at the workforce housing ordinance and see what's going on there. As you know, the workforce housing ordinance requires non-residential projects to provide a portion of the housing needed for the new employees that the project generates. That employee generation is based on use and square footage, which is identified within our development code, which we went through a little bit with the Tahoe-Donner project last session. Small projects are exempt or required to pay an in lieu fee, and then our ordinance requires that we do these annual check-ins to see how the workforce housing ordinance is working and if potential changes are necessary. And as noted with the in lieu fee, the council can choose to initiate amendments at any point. Just to give you a quick overview of the last 3 years of how this workforce housing ordinance has worked, we've had 4 projects that we've required workforce housing units. The industrial mixed use project, which is a 28,000 square foot industrial space with multifamily residential units. They are required to provide 2 workforce housing units. Crested Construction is required to provide an in lieu fee because of their workforce housing requirements. The Waldorf School is required to provide 58% of an in lieu fee. And then the Taladon Downhill Ski Lodge is required to provide 61% of an in lieu fee or a deed restriction of 1 unit, which is, I believe, the option that they're going down currently. No other projects have been approved with workforce housing requirements since 2018. And other projects that were previously approved that are not on this list include Grocery Outlet, Coburn Crossing, Quality Automotive, and High Altitude Fitness. And as with the in lieu fee last year, we, due to the minimal number of projects impacted by this ordinance, the council directed staff to defer potential changes of this ordinance to a larger discussion when the town updates the housing element, but that could change if you decide today. So today's staff's recommendation is to conduct a public hearing, which is what we're doing, accept public comment on the Affordable Housing in lieu fee program update, and adopt Resolution 2023-63 to approve the $115,517 in lieu fee based on the 2017 streamlined calculation process. And then review the affordable housing ordinances and in lieu fee structure as part of the next housing element update. So that's all I have. It's a quick presentation. If you have any questions, feel free.
Thank you very much, Yumi. Vice Mayor Pallavi, questions?
No questions. Been through this 6 times, maybe more. Yeah, all good.
Councilmember Zabriskie.
Thank you for doing the computation, well, actually answering all my questions, and for the computation on the changes in the median housing price, construction cost, and income limits from 2017 to 2023. Looking at the increase in construction costs, I can see how the amount of the fee is a much smaller fraction of the gap than what it was in 2017. And we still have that same tension between making development costs even higher, overall costs higher for developer, and so possibly dampening down housing construction versus our desire and need to provide affordable housing. So Yumi, what's the magic number that allows housing to continue while also providing affordable housing to the maximum extent possible?
I think that's $1 million question.
Okay. All right. Those are all my questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Henderson?
Well, since I've only been through it 3 times now, just one question. So in 2019 and 2020, the 2018 fee was retained, even though that was higher, instead of decreasing it in those subsequent years. Is that right?
That's correct.
So we could maintain it at the $134,413 at the current levels.
Yes, you can choose to not adopt a resolution tonight.
Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Klopstad.
So I'm sorry, I should have submitted this earlier, but I'm just realizing the average cost of a single family home, 1.138 million. We're talking about $115,000 in lieu fee, which is less than 10% of that cost. Just want to make sure. All right, thank you.
Thank you. I do not have any additional questions. Thank you. We will open it up for the public hearing. Any public comment? Seeing none, we will close public comment and bring it back up here. Vice Mayor Pallavi.
Yeah, I'd be in favor of retaining our existing level at the 134,000 and not making any additional changes to anything else, really. Simple.
Thank you.
Do you need any reasoning? We good?
No, that's good. Brevity is nice.
Yes.
Councilmember Zabriskie?
I am interested in the reasoning of the other council members, because for me, it is a question, the existing 134,000 or 115,000, which is what staff recommended. And
I'll give you my reasoning super quickly. One, I think the cost of construction actually still outpaces almost any of it just in real life. I think a lot of the numbers that we do get still lag. 12 to 18 months. And so I think A, cost of construction being where it is, B, the very minimal impact that this is really actually having at the end of the day, in terms of how much we're collecting through in lieu fees, doesn't to me, I would rather, it's sort of the same thing. I always reflect on like the commercial waste rates or other types of rates where rather than bobbing up and down and constantly changing them, predictability is so much more important. And seeing how our inflation is working, if we're looking at bumping it up, next year, well, okay, so we're going to reduce it this year. We're going to bump it back up again next year. It's just a constantly moving target. So just as a predictability indicator, I prefer holding things steady. When you're penciling stuff out, you know what it's going to be. Anybody who's already in our system has already been through that, and our lack of or just minimal amount of results that these programs seem to be having, to me, doesn't dictate constantly rearranging them.
I should have asked staff, but since I've already exhausted that opportunity, I want to treat you as my expert. And do you know generally what type of housing are we collecting these fees from? Not single family.
No. She showed you. There was a slide for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're collecting them generally on development projects, small, minimal development projects where you're talking about not even multifamily. I would say it's more commercial than multifamily. And it's basically because all of these projects are not triggering a full FTE unit. They're not triggering a full unit. And so you're basically saying, hey, you don't trigger a full unit, so instead of rounding up and making you build a full unit, which you can't afford and is probably going to make your project not happen, we're going to try to meet you in a reasonable middle space and allow you to pay a fee, which we will then contribute to a multifamily. The results are at multifamily, but the trigger is generally been commercial and industrial. Staff is welcome to correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, they're talking.
Yeah. They're ignoring us. They talk all day. Yeah.
Subject to what any other council member has to say, I agree with the Vice Mayor and Pallavi.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you. So I feel like this fee isn't really serving us anymore in the way that it was originally intended. Looking at the staff report, in 2017, the full cost to construct a unit was $438,000, and this was targeted to be, 20%. So I'm in favor of, obviously at least maintaining it at the current $134,413, and that's nowhere near 20%, which was how it was sort of originally designed and intended, because of the low yield associated with this, and it's not bringing in that much. I don't think it makes sense, as staff recommended, to go through a whole in lieu fee study at this moment. It's coming in a couple of years, but I just feel like this is a fee structure that no longer serves us and isn't really doing what it was originally intended to do.
I would only disagree with you in the fact that I do believe that is, I would say it's fairly good at 20% for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath townhome unit. You can generally build that for $500,000 to $550,000 these days. You can, if the density's high enough and you're doing enough of them. Yeah. Yeah, not like one plop down in the middle of nowhere, but Yeah.
Councilmember Henderson, would you be in favor? I feel like I'm hearing some music from somewhere up here. That's all right. I'll just groove to it.
I wasn't listening either.
Maybe it's me. No. You're in favor of maintaining where it's at now, and then would this be a bike rack item to look at a changing metric, or you're saying in a few years with the housing element?
I think per the staff recommendation with the housing element.
Just making sure.
Thank you for the clarification.
Councilmember Klövstad.
I concur with Councilmember Henderson that I don't think this it's marginally serving us at best, but it's also not beneficial enough to spend the time and consultant fees to update it. So I would be in favor of not adopting the 115 and keeping the existing fee schedule adopted in 2022.
Thank you. I am in agreement with my fellow council members. I think it makes sense to look at a different system or understand, what are the goals of this program when we're looking at our housing element. And at this time, it makes sense to maintain it where it's at. So I think we're all in agreement. So then that means no resolution is needed. Do we need to take action to maintain our current housing in lieu fee?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. Then we are done. Thank you very much. We appreciate that report, Yumi. So with that, we'll move back to item 7.2, approval of the fiscal year 23-24 through 24-25 strategic work plan.
I'm the closest to the presentation screen and might take the longest to set up here. So 1 second, please. Okay, so this is our first quarterly update from our newly adopted strategic focus areas and work plan. Just as a little bit of a reminder, this year's process was a little bit different in that we didn't adopt the work plan until June after adoption of the general plan. And so at that time, you had some short updates on different task items, and we've been repetitive with that in this cycle just to kind of get back on track. So this is really an update that we're just saying through June 30th and includes some actions that happened in May and June prior to the start of the fiscal year. And as a quick reminder, the goal of the work plan is to provide clear expectations for council, clear expectations for staff. I think there's a broadening understanding in the community of how we're using this to manage workload and also communicate what we've accomplished with the general plan or are working on with the general plan and other task areas. We have the bike rack as a place to put items on hold if there's opportunity for capacity building to advance those items or reprioritize them. And then just generally an overall representation of the amount of work that's being moved forward for the town. So we have 5 strategic focus areas, and there's 2 new goals that are highlighted, one under key infrastructure and connectivity. That's goal 8, cybersecurity posture and operational risk. And then under workforce housing, supporting housing for solutions for the unhoused. We'll talk more about those, but did want to highlight those at this point. And we have a lot of our staff here, so if you have questions, you can certainly ask those and we'll get you answers tonight. But also thank the staff for their work on completing this and all the work that we've accomplished in the last several months. And then especially point out to Chris and his IT team. Chris and his team have completed an annual work plan. It's a little outside of the cycle that we had started with this, so that's why you see a lot of new additions on the IT front, some of which are completed, some of which are in progress, but we're trying to meld those together so you have one comprehensive document. So for completed items, I'm going to go through these really high level, and then if you have questions, we can delve into them. Of course, we all remember that in May we adopted the general plan unanimously. We have completed polling for the library tax measure and had received the feedback from those polling results. The Stakeholder Advisory Committee for the River Revitalization Steering Committee, R2SC, has been formed and has met 4 times since its inception, and that is moving along well. And then for community serving infrastructure, the hospital master plan, the hospital has notified us that they are not pursuing their master plan at this time, so we've considered that complete. I would just note that there are still projects the hospital is working on that we are supporting them on, including their parking concerns and need for additional parking. For emergency preparedness, again, the general plan adoption, which includes the safety and noise element. And then both Chris and Logan in IT participated in the National Guard Cyber Dawn training. This is an opportunity that Chris brought with him when he joined our team and is really great in terms of regional collaboration and just staying connected with the most recent technologies and advancements and giving our team a chance to kind of attempt to hack into systems and identify when people are hacking into systems. Workforce housing, with the general plan implementation, we did have a conversation in August about a vacancy tax. We decided not to move forward with that. The housing density site analysis was adopted and approved with the general plan. And then in September, you approved objective design standards. For new housing programs, you've provided program changes and discussion about ADUs for loan and grant programs, and we have implemented the short-term workforce housing token program. Both of those are ongoing programs at this point, but in terms of the task item, we've considered them complete. For environmental sustainability, the preservation of Donner Lake and the item that was added to the work plan in June for the 4th of July impacts. You had a after action report in the fall that wrapped that up. Our biological and water resource mapping, you heard a presentation on the available information for that in September. For mode shift, everybody is well aware of these programs. We've done a lot of work on micromobility on the paved trails. We've implemented our bike share program, and we have implemented the year-long microtransit program that's in progress right now. For community engagement, many of these are also ongoing, and I think that's important to note. While we consider them complete, we certainly are not going to stop exploring new opportunities for community engagement or providing opportunities to enhance engagement with a variety of different populations within our community. We've hosted many events that are new events for us, including community pool night at the rec center and our event at the library. We've added staffing in our community engagement division. We currently have 2 interns that are supporting the communications efforts. And then a lot of work with our public art master plan and cultural district, the first commission-led public art project on Brockway, our art commission work plan, and then we did support the renewal of the cultural district designation, which was successful. For work in progress, we continue to partner with Nevada County, Friends of the Library, and other regional partners on our new Truckee library. The JPA formation process is almost complete. The collaboration to develop library partnership communication plan and supporting the lot line adjustment process. And then supporting connectivity through infrastructure development that promotes alternative forms of transportation. A lot of construction work that happened this summer, a lot of design work for future construction projects. Truckee River Legacy Trail, West River Streetscape Improvement, that is the park, Future Park, the Church Street Extension, Streetscape Improvement is the streetscape work, Church Street Extension, Trout Creek Restoration, the Railroad Mobility Hub. We've broken that into 3 different phases, Phase 1, Phase 2A, and Phase 2B. West River Streetscape Street redevelopment, that is the park, and then Reimagine Bridge Street. Public transit operations, we did have a discussion and conversation about our transit funding and moving that forward. More to come on that early next year. Incentivizing revitalization of East River and our parcel inventory. We are estimating at about 50% complete on that task. It's actually a much bigger task than one would think with the variety of ownerships along the corridor. For disaster preparedness, high-frequency communication radio equipment radio grant is 90% complete. We are redoing our emergency operation plans and our annexes, close to complete with that. Developing updated emergency operations center, position matrix and job descriptions. Our GIS mapping, we've provided all of the requested information at this point. We are just expecting additional requests to come in. Supporting the Fire Protection District with their community wildfire protection plan, and then preparing for succession planning within that department. We do anticipate bringing on an emergency services coordinator early next calendar year. Regional collaboration to maintain partnerships. We have actively participated in the Regional Information Technology Group on best practices in cybersecurity. That's one of those new items that we've added in consolidation of our volunteers and police services with the CERT program, volunteer group, and trying to create some efficiency there. For housing, you approved tonight the addition of another senior planner position, so we anticipate having those positions filled in early calendar year 2024, and then collaboration on regional and state federal partners to develop policies and funding strategies. So we are coordinating with our partners on housing for public agency land. That's both through the JPA and then through individual connections with our public agencies, such as the school district or any other entity looking to build workforce housing. For new housing programs, we've implemented the revised ADU program options per council direction, and then are really evaluating our current deed restricted housing monitoring program using some additional consulting services that are linked with our THAP or Truckee Home Access program. For sustainability, our waste reduction efforts, we're still working through the single-use foodware ordinance and the implementation and education phase of that. There's a progression of timelines of when the different components of that become effective. Our conversion to renewable diesel, and I'll just remind you, this is as of September 30th, so some of these may be more complete now than they were as of September 30th. And our recovery of organic waste product procurements, we are about 50% through that effort. About 70% through the REACH code conversation. There were some delays with that, pending some litigation and conversations at the state level that delayed some of the cost effectiveness and cost analysis for both the state and the local REACH code conversation. Continue to support Visit Truckee Tahoe and the destination stewardship planning process. And then our biomass feasibility study will be coming back to the council for discussion at the end of January, February. We've mostly wrapped that work up. We're just doing some final touches on that and then roll out to all the partner agencies. In communications and community cohesion, we are working rapidly on the development of the new town website, scheduled to launch in March. We're really excited for that. I think it's going to bring a lot more transparency and ease of use for our community. Parcel mapping upgrade, about 70% complete with that. Moving forward with our town branding and our branding guidelines, as well as adopting our townwide communication plan. We are waiting to finalize our DEI action plan in order to make sure that we encompass a variety of inclusive communication plans and strategies within that. And then building our catalog of photo and video assets for all of town staff to use during presentations or communications to the public. The development and implementation of a bike safety campaign that's scheduled to roll out next spring after the snow melts, and then our public art master plan, developing a procedure for implementing public art projects and the installation of the litter art down at the lake that we celebrated in October. For new items, disaster preparedness, a functional wildfire evacuation exercise. We think that's going to be important moving forward, so we suggest adding that into the work plan, and with our added capacity of our coordinator position, we think we can move that forward. Our FEMA disaster recovery program, this is work that we really have to do in alignment with the disasters last year with the snow events, and felt we should add that into the work plan. Streamlined recovery system for technology emergencies, that is added per our IT work plan. And then we did go off script with our work plan. This is kind of a living document, and we held the wildfire forum in the fall and felt like that was an important community conversation to have. And then goal 8, that's one of our new goals, our cybersecurity, posture, and operational risk. And this is, again, our independent security risk assessment, remaining very cognizant about our cybersecurity and staying on top of it. For environmental sustainability, Task 410 is new, and that is our environmentally sustainable e-waste management program. that is complete. We have a policy around that. We've been able to recycle a number of our old desktops that were wiped clean and offered to members through Sierra Community House, students that maybe were in need of computers. We didn't have any, if we had any left over after that, town staff were offered those to take their students. That's been very successful. Workforce housing, the bed and breakfast regulations is now added into the work plan and removed from the bike rack, or at least that's staff's recommendation. And we added an additional goal to support solutions for the unhoused. There is a group working on temporary solution for this winter, for winter weather sheltering, since we will no longer have that service offered out of the Church of the Mountains. And then the larger, more permanent solution group, that is the Homeless Advisory Committee. We've added that effort into the work plan for community engagement. Our Night Sky Fall Awareness Campaign, we did not have that in the work plan, but we did do a significant amount of work along that to advocate and provide awareness and education for that. And we plan to relaunch that in combination with a grant rebate program administered through SBC in the spring, March, April timeframe. And then IT is working on establishing a tech teams program in partnership with our other local entities and establishing, I have that on there twice, so sorry about that. We'll fix that for the final document, and upgrading our wireless access points for enhanced connectivity and transitioning to .gov domain. Bike rack items, I'm not going to go over the ones I already talked about, but the two new items are the master plan updates for the short-term rental ordinance. We did realize that some of our master plans have conflicting language about short-term rentals as compared to our ordinance. We want to highlight that and bring that back at some point to come to alignment. And then our management and protection of the sensitive biological resources, and that's really developing the plan. Other significant priorities, these are new that were added to attachment 3, and that's the operational and service delivery assessment, and then our STR complaint and investigation process that we'll be bringing back to the council. I did want to highlight for a moment that we do have a new dashboard, if you will. We looked for a kind of off-the-shelf dashboard, and nothing really fit for what we were looking for and how we present our work plan and our strategic focus areas. So Aldana in the clerk's office took the initiative to develop one all on her own, and I think she did a great job. You can access the videos that each of you did to really help educate the community on what these strategic focus areas are. This is the compilation one. And then as you scroll down, if you click on each individual focus area, the individual video is here, and there is a drop-down bar for each of the goals. And we'll update this with approval tonight, so the September update is on here as well. So this is a good resource for you as council members, also a good resource if you want to direct the community to any of these areas to see where we are with our progress. And you can find that under government, under town council, council strategic priority. Pretty easy to find. And great job, Anandana, for taking that initiative and doing that all on her own. And so with that, we just have the recommendation to receive the work plan tonight. And if you have any other direction going forward, good opportunity to have that conversation.
Thank you very much. And that's exciting that it's on our website now. That's a great tool for all of us. We'll start with questions. Councilmember Zabriskie.
The only area where I have questions are on 4.8 on the biological survey. Other stuff looks, I don't have any questions on the other items. I'll go for it. Okay.
I know you asked some in advance too, I'm guessing. I know there were quite a few.
Yes.
Yes, which, hey, that's great.
I'm looking at this in terms of the action item 3.f and then the task item itself, and then trying to get a better handle on just how much has been done and what remains to be done. And so I want to begin by asking, and with respect to 3.F, do we now have a list of special status species within the town or the planning area?
When you say 3.F, you mean in the general plan?
Yes.
Oh, do we have a list that you could pull up like as an index? Is that
No,
what you're
has
asking?
staff compiled a list of this, of the species, of the special status species known or suspected to occur in Truckee?
Without going to the maps, there's not a separate list. There was, I think there was information in the general plan and the EIR, but we don't have a list
Okay.
that we've developed.
Well, then my next question was going to be, did we map all the special status species that are in Truckee?
We draw from the state maps.
Okay. Does that mean we took the state databases and we took what CDF identified as special status species, and were we from that list be able to identify the ones which are known or suspected to occur in Truckee?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
And that was the presentation that you received in,
Excuse me?
that was the presentation you received in October.
Okay. So it sounds like we do have some kind of list for all the special status species.
Maybe it's the definition of list. So we would be
Yeah,
able to pull that up for you. I couldn't open a list for you right now without going through a map.
You don't need to.
Okay.
Now we have maps of some but not all of their occurrences.
Ooh, we're gonna let Drew come up here too, because
Okay.
he's our mapping expert.
Okay.
And so,
Okay.
Drew, you can come all the way down here, Drew, if you'd like.
Yeah, I was going to get up and just sort of, read what Drew wrote. So I'll let Drew answer some of these questions.
Okay. Drew.
Okay. Yes, we have access to state databases that have that information.
Okay.
There's other pieces of sensitive species mapping that we don't currently have access to. That would be an additional cost or subscription to the state to get that information.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Would it be safe to say that the work that was done was drawing upon the state-generated information on special status species and incorporating the parts of those databases and maps that pertain to Truckee?
Certainly. Yes, that's accurate.
In regard to the non-woody plants and fungi that are special status species, do we now have maps of their occurrences in Truckee?
We have maps of their occurrence. We do have confirmation of occurrence. We don't have maps showing where they are.
Okay, and remember that we talked about the western bumblebee. Do we have a delineation of its habitat within Truckee or not?
We don't. Again, we have occurrence maps and ranges, but we don't have particular presence of mapping
Okay.
those floristic communities.
And when you say occurrence mapping, you mean it's a map that tells us the species occurs in Truckee?
Yeah, the likely occurrence. So it's within the species range, and we have habitat that species requires for foraging or breeding. So it's not an actual observation of that species.
Okay, these are based on what we think are what the state thinks are
what the
suitable
state- yeah.
ecological conditions.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, and we have that for the bumblebee or not?
We have that for the western bumblebee. Again, we don't have the specific locations, the floristic communities that are required for breeding or, so yeah, it's No, I haven't been out doing surveys of western bumblebee.
Right. Yeah. No, my question is directed at how complete are the state maps as they pertain to Truckee? What's the sufficiency of the mapping as it applies to Truckee?
A good question. I think that's a question for the state, to be honest. I'm not sure I can answer that.
Okay.
Maybe if I can guess what you're getting at here. I think the mapping itself, as we've demonstrated during the presentation, and then we've had some one-on-one time, the GIS open house, the maps are actually really pretty good. There's a lot of information on there that we can draw from. If you're asking what level of, whether it's ground truthing or expertise has gone through to say, well, just because the environment exists, the species may not, that's not available.
No, I would be getting to whether there are more limiting factors than are reflected in the state maps. Recognizing that the state maps are mapping the entire state of California, and we're a drop in the bucket. And our concern is with the accuracy of the maps within our much smaller, within our microcosm. The state would, I'm trying to find out if the state mapping is it for all of these species or any of these species is at too gross of a level that we should go out and look at the literature as the task item seems to suggest. That's my question.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get at, and it's not clear.
I think I think that made it pretty clear. I think it is so variable species to species. So I can't make a broad statement that yes, it's all good. We can trust the state. It really is species by species, like you indicated with the bumblebee.
Yeah. For some species, we have a lot of
data. Yeah.
Data.
Yep.
And then for others,
we kind of infer.
much.
Yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't want to lose sight of the fact, too, though, that some of that detail comes from individual project analysis. When we're doing EIRs for a project, some of that more in-depth detail will come out of the EIR. And Danielle, you can add on to that if you
Well, we were just talking about this, that it's our understanding that a lot of biologists will submit their reports to the state so that when the state's updating its mapping, it's using the information they have from the biologists who've done the field assessment.
Right.
So, I mean, even though we don't sort of have a list, because we've done so many individual property assessments within Truckee, there are a lot of species that we know are either endangered or listed, or, I mean, there's a lot of common ones. So, but we do have, all of those on file for pretty much every project that's definitely required in EIR, and even some that we've required for mitigated negative declarations too.
Have we incorporated that information into our GIS mapping?
Yeah, so
well, some of it, right?
Some of it, yeah. But it was also shown in that presentation that if you're looking at project level detail, then through our GIS, you can kind of click into the parcel and get all of the environmental documents associated with development of that parcel that we have in our system. So yes, by the map, you can find those documents.
By which map?
The staff map.
And that's it already part of our GIS?
That's part of, it links directly into all of those documents within the mapping application.
Okay. Do we have, what mapping information do we have on the two bats that are
And Councilmember Zabriskie, I feel like we don't want to get too specific into certain species. It sounds like, Drew has given us a broad context of what we're drawing.
But that's exactly what I'm trying to do, because I'm just reading what the general plan is requiring. It's not what I'm asking for.
Yep.
It's what the council approved. And I understood 3.F to be a list and GIS-based maps of the occurrence of all the special status species in Truckee.
And I think what we've heard is we have the maps based on state information. We might not be down to a granular level that maybe you're asking about, which could be then part of the work plan item. I just don't want us to run through each species because it sounds like we have an overarching, here's what the data is that we have available to us now.
I'm using bats as an example.
Okay, you can do one more.
I have more questions.
You can do more questions. I just don't
Right.
want to get
Okay.
into every single species.
All right. So do we have the map, the bat habitats mapped?
At habitats map.
The two special status bats?
Yeah. We have what the state has on those.
Does that mean we don't know if we have them mapped or not?
We have occurrence maps, as indicated before.
Or the bats?
Or the bats, yep.
Okay.
That's part of the, state database.
Okay. And then can you explain just on the, not every species, but just the non-woody plants again, are each of those species mapped in our system?
They are not, no.
So just a comment I might offer, maybe in follow-up to Mayor Romack's suggestion. Given that this is a work plan discussion, what we have is developed the capacity to access information that is on the shelf coming from a number of different sources. I think it can be argued that meets the intent, but this is a question for the council, of general plan item 3.f. Possibly the work plan discussion is if the council as a whole believes that a higher level of accuracy than the off-the-shelf information that is currently available to us is a priority of the council to obtain, given all the other priorities of the council, maybe that would be a good discussion for the council to have as it relates to this particular work item.
Yeah.
And just for context, we could spend millions of dollars it's kind of an infinite scale, right?
Mhm.
So we've got the capacity to access the off-the-shelf information. Depending on what level of detail you want to get to in terms of going beyond the off-the-shelf information, you could spend hundreds of thousands of dollars or you could spend millions of dollars depending on what the council's interest is there.
Yeah. I understand we allotted $100,000. And how much have we spent?
We have not spent.
Huh?
We have not spent funding in that capital project,
Okay.
other than staff time.
Yeah. And it's not, for me, what I'm trying to elicit is whether we've completed the task that was assigned, and it's not so much arguing over what's a sufficient degree of accuracy, but whether we have GIS mapping for all the sensitive species.
Councilmember
for
Zabriskie,
Truckee.
I appreciate, Dan, those comments. I think you could say we've completed that, and then that's for us to decide. If you don't feel like it's sufficient enough, then that would be part of the work plan to say we need to do more if you feel like these are sufficient. So I don't think staff can give us any more of an answer than they've provided. They've told us what the data is. And if we decide we need more, then that's up to us to then ask for more work on that.
Yeah. I wanted to be clear to us and to the public what's been accomplished, and then we can decide whether it's complete or not.
Yep.
And so one of the questions was, do we have the mapping for the non-woody plants and fungi? And what I heard was we do not.
That's correct.
Okay.
I mean, we do, we have what the state has. Yeah.
So did the state give us mapping for
So
the non-woody plants?
Councilmember Zabriskie,
Yeah.
again,
Okay.
the state gave us the maps. They know these species exist in these habitats, but those maps do not show this plant is here, this plant is here. Just this plant probably could be in this area based on everything that goes into plants living in an area.
Yeah, I'm confused. I heard that we don't have mapping for the non-woody plants.
I think we're struggling with some of the terminology.
Yeah.
So we have a variety of the maps from the state and all the information the state collects.
Yeah.
I think we're struggling with, do we have something specific that we created beyond just the state level. So we have the state information on that, correct? June?
No, I want to know if the state information is complete enough that it satisfies what we called for.
That's
locally.
for us to decide.
Well, that's a factual question.
But what I heard from staff is we have these maps. This fits with, you could say this fits with 3.F. If we don't feel that that is sufficient enough, that's us up here to say we need more detailed maps. So I feel like we don't want to keep asking this same question. This is for deliberation.
And maybe actually stepping back a little bit, and Dan kind of started this, but if you recall with the general plan conversations, this was a request that came out of some of the community conversations was to advance this. I think it was originally midterm, and there was a request to have this be a short-term item. And so we put this in the work plan, actually I think in the bike rack, to come back and have a presentation on all the available information that's out there, and does that meet the general plan intent or not. And we put a placeholder in the budget. So if you decided it did not, there would be funding available. If you decided it did, that funding would stay in the budget to do the plan piece of the general plan, which we know we haven't done yet. And that still is, I think that is a short-term item, but it's not in our work plan. Okay. So I don't think when you refer to the capital budget, we weren't intending to spend $100,000 necessarily on this piece. We wouldn't even know what a budget would be for this because we didn't know what the expectation was.
Okay. What I'm reading is the project description was prepare biological and water resource studies as needed to update resource mapping, and we allocated $100,000 for it. And what we've accomplished is acquire state databases, incorporated them into our GIS, and it sounds like we do need studies, that the state database is incomplete as it applies to Truckee. That's my conundrum. That's what I'm hearing.
I would recategorize that to say that I think that's what your interest would be. We didn't make that conclusion. We said this is what we have. We generally are feeling comfortable with this. I'm hearing you say you want more comfort level and would like to spend money to get more comfort level. And that's okay. And again, because this was a kind of high level come back from the general plan conversation, when we developed the budget, we weren't in the details of what exactly this would be. It wasn't like our DEI action plan where we had more of a context of what we were looking for and could place a better budget figure on it.
Okay. From what I'm hearing, the action item is not complete. There are gaps in the information we got from the state. And if we're going to treat it as complete, what we're really doing is changing what it is we expected and intended to have under this task item,
So,
which we can do. But I don't want to sit here and pretend like the task as originally envisioned was completed.
This is deliberation then. If we feel like it's not completed and we want to dedicate more resources towards it, then that should be part of our discussion on the work plan, because staff has said this is complete. If you feel this is not complete, then that's part of our deliberation.
Okay. And I think with more questioning, we would see all the more how it's incomplete. But
I don't think we need to ask more questions if you've reached a conclusion that we can then discuss. And if other council members have other questions that would help them reach a conclusion on that item, then they can ask them.
Maybe we should have the other council members fire away for a bit.
Sounds good. All right, Councilmember Henderson.
I don't have any questions on this item. Or maybe I'll just flag that I think Councilmember Klofstad had one that she wanted for consideration. So would love to explore that during deliberation.
We'll go to Councilmember Klofstad next.
I do have a couple of questions. And no surprise, they're all in the reduce greenhouse gas emissions and be an environmental leader category. So it looks like we will have a Civic Spark do the GHG emission inventory update. Is that correct? it said starting October 2023.
We do have our 2 Civic Sparks on board, one in housing and one working with sustainability, and they are working on that piece.
Awesome. And so when would we anticipate that report?
I'm
Something
going
to
to
look forward
look over to Hillary or Aaron on that one.
Very broad. I just, want to put a pin in that.
We would expect it to be complete sometime during this Civic Spark year, which goes through next September. It is the only item that our Civic Spark Fellow is assisting with that doesn't have concrete deadlines like our foodware ordinance for implementation. So we are kind of leaving some flexibility to fit it around those other items.
Makes sense. So before September of 2024. Okay. Task 3.2, which is the tier 2 food waste generators. January 1st, 2024 is really soon, and it doesn't look like we have a good solution there. Have we looked into some of the apps that address this? I know there's a bunch out there where the restaurants and coffee shops get on board and they offer up like grab bags at the end of the day. Have we looked into some of those types of options to solve that conundrum?
Yes, we have been working with Placer County to explore options for using an app. That January 1st deadline is the one set by the state, and we have been working with CalRecycle. They are aware that our region does not currently have capacity to recover edible prepared food from those tier 2 generators. So we have begun meetings with an app that may be willing to come in and are seeing how we might leverage that.
That's very exciting. Love to see that. I've used it in other areas, and I think it's a really brilliant solution to, I guess, bridging that gap of what's left over yet what you still want to be able to recover. Task 4.2, renewable diesel. So the new tanks are complete, and we have all of our diesel units fueling there, as well as TDPUD and fire district. Is that correct?
Yes, I know the fire district has fuel facilities at some of their fire stations. What I'm not clear on is if the fire department is doing 100% of their fueling at the town facility, which is 100% renewable diesel, or if they're also doing some fueling at their own facility. And I couldn't speak to what fuel product they're purchasing for their own facility.
Okay, and that's fine. That's not for us to determine. I'm very excited about this program, and I'm wondering if we have the opportunity, or have had the opportunity to offer up that to other agencies so they could at least try it and see whether or not it might work for their fleets. I think that's a really great way to just
we
expand that program.
We certainly have the capacity to do that, probably with the exception of Caltrans. When I say we have the capacity, we clearly have the capacity to offer it up to other entities on a trial basis. Like most other local entities, we now have the capacity to say, hey, if you want to use our fueling facility, we could do a similar agreement as we did with the PUD and the fire district. We don't have the capacity to serve Caltrans.
I'm glad we didn't make anything or build anything quite that big.
Right.
So I think that's perfect. Would it be a huge staff lift to spend a little time offering that to some other agencies, or at least to come fuel a couple of tanks and see how it works for them? Again, it's such a great and fast and simple way to reduce GHG in our region. I'd love to leverage it.
Yeah, I think the way I would, if we were going to approach that, would be to, probably mention to the other Truckee area entities that use diesel that we now have more capacity, and that if they have an interest in potentially doing joint fueling at our facility, we'd be open to that. Or if they have an interest in experimenting with renewable diesel, we could figure out a way to do that and probably start at that level.
We have an area managers meeting that I think that would be a good conversation for.
That would be great. Thank you so much. And then any kind of feedback on that would be wonderful, because I would love to reach out to some of those board members and just say, hey, we've offered this up. I'd like to know if you're taking advantage of that offer.
And I said Caltrans is the only one I'd have concern with. Actually, I'd be not sure about I don't know what the school district's fuel demand is either.
I don't know anybody in Caltrans, and
Right.
we can let the school district ride for a while.
Yeah.
Because they're converting to electric buses, right? Okay, last two are kind of combined. 6.3, building decarbonization roadmap. There's no responses to the RFP, but I wasn't clear in the description. Is this now going to be done in-house, or are we going to go back out for another RFP, or what's the plan there?
So the majority of that roadmap was always going to be completed in-house by our staff. The RFP was for consultant support on a very specific portion of the cost analysis. We are right now moving forward with the rest of that roadmap, and we will reevaluate early next year if we think we want to go back out, if we think that that cost analysis is really critical to this plan, and see if we are able to do that in-house. And we certainly may choose to reissue that RFP if we feel it's necessary.
Okay, thank you. And so with that, earlier I had talked about kind of the possibility of either expanding or continuing the weatherization program, expanding the AMI or continuing it in years. Would that naturally become part of this building decarbonization roadmap? Do I need to have a separate task for that, or is it really already part of it?
I think that is sort of naturally part of the roadmap that is looking at, in general, what are the policies and programs we recommend implementing to achieve our building decarbonization and GHG reduction goals. So I think it does fit in within that scope of that existing project. Thoughts?
I think it's part of it, but if we think of what the bike rack is, it's kind of just a reminder holding spot. So if you want a little bit more detail on that, pending when the roadmap will be done, you might want to have a conversation about that beforehand.
And so maybe the bike rack item is more a reminder to consider future expansion of that program and its funding needs.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Pallavi, no questions? All right. I do not have any further questions either. Thank you. With that, we will open it up to public comment. Is there any member of the public who'd like to make a comment? Seeing none, we will close public comment and we'll bring it up here for deliberation. So we'll go back, Councilmember Zabriskie. Definitely heard from you. You were feeling like the maps maybe were not sufficient to what you envisioned in the general plan. So one of the items in the work plan, which I know Mountain Area Preservation talked about in their letter to us, was bumping up, taking out this new item, the management and protection of sensitive biological resources, to coordinate with various entities and local interest groups to prepare a more comprehensive plan for the management and protection of sensitive biological resources. So were you thinking that item in the bike rack, you'd like to move it into the work plan?
I'm sorry, are you talking about mountain area preservation?
Well, I know in their letter, they asked that this item 6 in the bike rack, would be moved into the work plan, which would be a more detailed look at our biological resources, which is what I was kind of hearing you say. You didn't think that the maps we got from the state were sufficient enough. So yeah, item 6 on here. Is that what you were thinking to?
No, I'm just looking at the task, prepare biological and water resource studies as needed to update resource mapping. And then in trying to figure out what was needed, I'm looking at action item 3F, which says to update a list and GIS-based map of occurrence of rare, threatened, and other special status species. And what I've heard from staff is the maps do not provide sufficient information for Truckee. And we see that in the staff response to the questions I provided, the written responses. Plant and fungi individuals are not mapped. And he goes on to say, what we have are plant communities that likely contain these species.
So, and again, this is back to we're talking about the work plan. We have our general plan, which informs our work plan. So if you feel like we have not done 3F, we have not met what we need to do, then we would need to move something into our work plan to have more effort be put into this.
It's already in our work plan. It's prepare studies as needed.
That's our
to make up
CIP, right? Or is that our work plan page?
I'm looking at the CIP, but it's also part of the work plan.
Well, it was in, I pulled up the bike rack page here. So it was in the bike rack as item 5. Again, the CIP was just a last minute addition following adoption of the general plan. So it was a placeholder. Our response to putting it in the bike rack for item 5 was to demonstrate the information that was available. We had thought we had heard some feedback that it was generally sufficient, but now I think we're hearing differently, at least from your perspective, council member.
Yes.
So without hearing the other 4, maybe something to consider if you feel like there's more work that's needed on this. Everybody can tell, I think, and hopefully those at home, that Drew is our man for this.
Right.
And when you get into the individual species of the bees and the bats and all the other fungi, a lot of us are like, we're not tracking with you as much. So Drew is our resource, whether it's leading a consultant or doing some of that work. And he would not have capacity to do that, particularly with the biomass feasibility study still underway and wrapping that up, because he's leading that as well. So if more work is needed in this, then I would suggest that we keep it in the bike rack as item 5. And when you make a determination on how you want to move forward with biomass or not move forward with biomass, we'd be able to better understand capacity to either have a consultant come on board and manage that process or do work internally.
So, and I think, Jen, you made a really good point. I think at this point, it'd be good to hear from the other council members, because if just Councilmember Henderson, I saw you pull the mic closer. So your thoughts maybe on this specific, and then we can come back and talk about other ones too.
Sure. So I have what might be a little bit of a different lens on it. And so I'm just going to throw it out there. I feel like we had that wonderful map presentation, just a few weeks ago, and we really were able to drill down looking through, different biological resources, looking down like all the way to the parcel level. You showed us how to do that. And when I pull up our general plan, it talks about using, the maps and associated database should incorporate all available data. So I sort of feel like we are using the available data that is at our disposal. It also says that we should update the database regularly to ensure it includes information that is as current as possible. So as new data sources and new information becomes available, whether that's in 6 months or 12, we would then revisit those updates at a time when there's also staff capacity. So to me, I actually say we have met the intent of this. We have developed these maps. We've incorporated all of the available data that we do have access to. So I view it a little bit differently, and that's just kind of the lens that I'm putting on it. But I'd love to hear from the other council members as well. And do you want me to address that one, or?
Yeah, just address that one
Okay.
for now, because I think that's important. But you would support leaving this in the bike rack, the item 6 on here, as a potential as we're looking for new available data. You wouldn't remove that from the bike rack or want to move it anywhere else?
I would support retaining 6 as we have it up on the screen here.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Pallavi, you were hitting your mic.
I was simply going to say I agree with Councilmember Henderson on number 5. I'm not exactly clear on what number 6 is, so I'm not sure. Is that just like we're going to update the maps? What is number 6? New management and protection of sensitive biological resources. What does that mean?
So I can give that to you. It's to coordinate with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and local interest groups to prepare a comprehensive plan, what Town Manager Jen Calloway was talking about, the comprehensive plan for the actual management and protection of these different resources. It's informed by the mapping, but it's drawing together an actual plan for the protection of these sensitive assets.
So I would just maybe change the language. I'm not sure that I agree that we should be the lead agency on such an endeavor. I would say supporting of all of that is wonderful. I think we have a role to support it, but as the lead agency on a biological resource project, but that's just not what we do. So I wouldn't necessarily agree with the language as it pertains to number 6. I'm fine with keeping the intent in the bike rack, but I don't think we are the lead agency. I'm not sure we need to get into that now because it can stay on the bike rack in whatever form, but I'm fine also with crossing 5 off, as you already mentioned. I'm also comfortable with adding Councilmember Klofstad's suggestion, and that does it for me.
Councilmember Klofstad, thoughts on 5 and 6?
Yeah, I would say my lens is very similar to Councilmember Henderson's. Yes, I agree. That's the direction we need to go, and thank you for supporting my request.
Can I say I also support Councilmember Klofstad's request?
Sure.
Okay, just to get that done.
It's 8:37. I like it. So I agree with Councilmember Henderson and my fellow council members over here. So Councilmember Zabriskie, at this time, I'm not hearing support for additional work on mapping exercises, but leaving this in the bike rack. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, there's 2 ways of completing this task. One is simply doing what this capital item says, prepare biological and water resource studies to fill in the gap left by the mapping we got from the state. And there are additional resources. We do not have all available data. There are a number of field scientists who have worked in this area, who are specialists in these different species, who have not even been contacted. And the $100,000, we could get by with a quarter of that amount to pay for someone to reach out and contact the specialists in the field who are familiar with local conditions and prepare a report based on their knowledge.
Yes.
So I'm really hammering on what I think are factual distinctions that need to be appreciated.
And I value that opinion. I think there's not support for moving more items into the work plan, because taking 25,000 out of the 100,000 still means staff capacity, still means taking something away. There's a lot of things we could do if we could just add 25,000 to something and capacity. But at this time, I think we should move on from this. We've heard your thoughts, and we'll have another quarterly update. Are you supportive of Councilmember Klofstad's bike rack addition?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other bike rack additions or any other thoughts? Are we good to accept? I don't think we need to make a motion. We're just accepting this quarterly update. All right.
Right.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, staff, for all your input on that one as well. So with that, we will move to council member reports. Vice Mayor Pallavi.
Not much official to report. Congratulations to the Truckee Wolverines football team for winning the state championship, and the girls soccer team for making it to the finals in like sudden death overtime that they lost. Oh, it was devastating. And other than that, just a couple of recent media inquiries coming back on traffic and parking and winter and stuff. So wouldn't be surprised if we start to see a little bit of more heightened attention on Truckee in the coming weeks and months as our season unfolds. And I think that's it that I had. Yeah. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Thank you. Councilmember Klofstad.
Well, I actually want to start by saying what I should have said on the last agenda item, and it is just amazing to me all that staff has accomplished, especially on the general plan and having it barely have been adopted 6 months ago. It's really exciting. I really pumped it in my newsletter just because I am so excited about it. I'm thrilled at the website because that's a resource that I know I'm going to use personally, just like, oh, where are we with this? I can't remember because there's a lot of tasks. But also being able to have that as a resource to send community members to, I think is going to be hugely beneficial for all of us and our partner agencies to utilize. So thank you so much for doing that. Really, really appreciate that work of all the work accomplished as well as the work in putting that all on the website. Okay, so council reports. We had our CTA governing partners meeting and we're kind of preparing for our January meeting. We're going to have a presentation from a local sustainability communications and marketing person that I think is going to be really, really interesting to all local businesses. It's basically going to talk about all the whys, why to become a sustainable business. And I know we're really trying to reinvigorate our green business certification program. So I'm hoping to work with staff and SBC on elevating attendance at that meeting because I think people will really find it fascinating to see what customers in particular are looking for from businesses in sustainability. Tahoe Basin Biomass Team meeting. We're considering adding a new partner to that organization and really just trying to finalize those last proposals. So still making progress on that. And also coming up with, how long have we been meeting and we're just now going to focus on a mission statement? I kind of thought that was funny, but it's exciting because to me that says that team or alliance has longevity. It's going to continue to meet. There's we're not going to solve our fuels management issue with one biomass plant or even two biomass plants or even three biomass plants in our region. So we're in it for the long haul, and that's pretty exciting for me. And then attended the Good On Your ribbon cutting in Chamber Mixer, and what a cool little space that is. So that's about it for me.
Thank you. Councilmember Zabriskie?
I met with Drew a couple of times and took up a lot of his time, and I really appreciate all the help he provided. It made me appreciate even more how important our environmental values are to our community character and to our tourist economy. And we are moving in the right direction on that. And it was just a very pleasure working with Drew as much as I did. And then I attended a Truckee River Water Basin Group meeting, Truckee River Legacy Foundation Board meeting. We've had 2 river revitalization meetings, one with members and then another one with consultants earlier today. And then at the last Good Morning Truckee, we heard reports from the ski lodge owners, the ski industry executives from our area.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Henderson.
Okay, like Councilmember Pallavi, nothing official, especially after the last council report, which was lengthy. But I did really enjoy the Truckee tree lighting. It was amazing seeing everyone out from TDMA and all of the small businesses. And it really was just, it's one of those events every year that I feel so grateful for, how it brings everyone together, how all the elementary school kids are out there with their teachers decorating their trees. And it just, for me, sort of reinforced again like our goals around community and connectivity and inclusivity. So.
And so sorry, I would be remiss and probably scolded if I didn't announce the Festive Fridays being put on by the Truckee Downtown Merchants Association the next 3 Fridays. Most businesses will be staying open till 8 p.m. with lots of fun themes and parties and all sorts of holiday goodness, sustainability things going on, and all sorts of action downtown till 8 p.m. the next 3 Fridays.
Thank you very much. I second that. The downtown tree lighting was amazing. It's so much fun. And appreciate the Festive Fridays coming up. Also, just wanted to add on, congrats to the Truckee High Wolverines, football champions, not only on the field, but they were the academic champions as well. They had the team had the highest cumulative GPA of any football program in the entire state of Nevada. So I think that's really impressive too. And yes, we play in Nevada for those who forget. But not only great on the field, but do well in the classroom. So congrats to them. Was at the Good Anya ribbon cutting as well. Fantastic store. And then last thing is, it is Giving Tuesday. So today's a great day to give to your favorite local nonprofits. You can go to givebacktahoo.org. It's got over 70 of our local nonprofits. If you're not sure who to give to or what to give to, you can read more about a bunch of them, but just a great opportunity to support our local community. So with that, we will close for tonight. Thank you all.